Hello and welcome back to the Uncorked podcast. Today we are going to be doing our reactions to number 11 through 20 of the Dramface top 40 Scotch malt whiskey distilleries. We've completed numbers 21 through 40, and then a few of the distilleries that dropped out after the last data aggregation. And before we get started, if you haven't watched episode 1 and 2 and you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back to episode 1 and watch like the first 20 minutes. Obviously, I recommend you watch both of the episodes so you're fully caught up, but
Absolutely.
understand we're a good 4 hours into this conversation at this point. But we went over basically all of the relevant information as to where this information came from, why it exists, and how we kind of got here in the first place. But I'd like to introduce the my co-host or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
My brother Kevin.
Well, here he is.
He's back to share his thoughts.
Hello.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Looking excited to get going on these. We're starting to get into some of the juicy stuff. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, we were talking about that. Probably more familiar with some of these distilleries. Oh, that's a good point. Again, I think I've mentioned this before, but Kevin and I don't know everything there is to know about each and every one of these distilleries.
of course.
Some of them we've had more experience with than others. Some of them very little. Some of them quite a bit. And so we'll be dipping in and out of kind of the general vibe that we kind of understand these distilleries to have from the online enthusiast community. Forgive us if you strongly disagree with something that we say or we say something that's not entirely accurate. We do our best. I try to catch that stuff, but yeah, we're just here to have a kind of a chill conversation and to go over um, what we are now into the thick of the top distilleries in Scotland, according to Whiskey Nerds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely getting to the point where, you know, I think a lot of people would be it's kind of in that in between of like the most beloved and then some of those, especially I feel like in the 21 to 30, you had a lot of the distilleries that over those past couple decades, I think maybe a couple decades ago, they would have been at the top of the list.
Mhm. Yep.
Lagavulin, Talisker, Highland Park, Pulteney. Like I feel like there's been a major shift in the last 10 to 20 years, and I feel like this group of 10 is kind of right in the middle of that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Kind of what I think I even referred to them as the kind of the old guard last time, and
Hmm.
we still have some of those up at the top here, but it does feel like some of those old classic standbys. There's a good number of them that have fallen back in the kind of to the back of the pack and even off of the list for
Hmm.
some of them. So uh, it's definitely the new age in Scottish single malts. I don't know. Being that single malts haven't been around that long, it kind of feels weird to say that there is an old guard. We're kind of talking like 90s into like the early 2000s. Obviously, there were single malts available, but
Yeah,
prior to that, but they didn't really take off until
yeah. And in terms of a whole, you have hundreds of options.
yeah,
Uh, that's new.
yeah, yeah. Way
20,
more
30
choice,
years ago. Yeah.
way more expressions, special releases. Then obviously you have the independent bottlers, which we've talked about. So the independent bottlers are the reason why some of these distilleries are even on the list,
Oh yeah.
just because either they're not available at all or their official releases are kind of below standard for at least the whiskey geeks. But with that, why don't we
Yeah.
jump in? And I got the
Let's
screen up
do it.
here now. Let's talk about number 20, one of my favorite distilleries,
And
uh,
mine.
Ben Nevis. So Ben Nevis is an interesting case. They are owned by Nika, and as I'm sure a lot of you know, a whole heck of a lot, a whole heck of a lot of Ben Nevis gets shipped over to Japan and essentially bottled in blends or maybe even just straight up as Japanese whiskey, probably blended most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
I understand.
and Ben Nevis really, they do their 10-year-old release. They have a non-age statement release. I'm not even going to try to pretend to pronounce it correctly. It's a Gaelic name. Um, and I think they do a 10 cast strength release. Maybe I don't know if that's a yearly thing that they do, but
Mm,
it's not available everywhere. Like if we want one, we've got to get it from overseas. I don't think I've ever seen one on the shelf here in the US. So this is
mm.
primarily one that people probably know through independent bottlers, which is
Yeah, so at least
curiously,
especially in America. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, especially probably in the US. But probably even in the UK because there's a lot of independent bottlings of Ben Nevis, but they all seem to be pretty young. It's oftentimes single
Yep.
year age statements and oftentimes heavily cask influenced, heavily sherried a lot of the times, which for me is a little unfortunate.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, in terms of a lot of the distilleries you see in independent bottlings that are often independent bottlings, uh, Ben Nevis comes up relatively often, but you're right,
Mm,
it's almost always 11 or young, like even 11, it's
yeah,
9, 8, 9, 8, 7s.
yeah,
I've even seen, bottles of 4-year-old and stuff like that floating
yeah,
around.
yeah. Part
Um,
of Signatory's most recent 100 proof, 100 imperial proof, they're referring to 57.1. They did a pretty wide ranging release of single malts at that imperial proof, and one of them was a 4-year-old Ben Nevis.
mhm. Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, you don't see anything in the teens, but then you see them in the 20s and plus. Uh,
Yeah, those
there's this
1996
weird,
Ben Nevis. Yeah,
yeah, there's this weird vacuum. It seems, anyways, at least from our perspective,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. If
that that's
I,
that, that I don't see in any other distillery.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. One of my new hobbies to prevent myself from buying stuff is to just go put every whiskey I want from a UK shop into the cart and then just walk away. Like, I spent like half an hour just adding all the stuff I would get if I could, and then
Window shopping at its
yeah,
finest.
yeah, it works. It stops me. It stops me. I don't know. I get the high of click and add to cart, I guess, and then um, I don't
Mm,
have the the negative consequences of seeing the credit card bill at the end of the month. But yeah, 1996 by Nevis. I mentioned one of my favorite whiskeys that are
yeah.
out there. It's a pretty well known vintage. It's I I would say I've probably see a couple a year come out from various outlets. Um, Nichols and Perks did one recently. I think Royal Mile Whiskies did one because I think I have both of those.
Mm,
Um, and I have one open from Milroy's that I got from auction a couple years
ooh,
ago now,
nice.
and typically they're not heavily cask influenced, which is good, and you just get that super dirty tropical note that I have just absolutely fallen in love with, mostly due to those older Ben Nevises. So I try to buy those when I see them. There's like the one thing that I'll kind of overpay for. Well, I guess it depends on what you consider overpaying. It's what I consider at times I'm probably paying more than I would for a lot of other stuff.
Sure, yeah.
But I've got a few of those in the waiting in the wings to make sure that I'll at least have some of it for the foreseeable future. Um, but I just finally cracked open my official 10-year-old bottling
Mm,
after you gave me a sample in one of the earlier episodes. I can't remember exactly which one, maybe underrated, overrated episode, and I loved it. I was like, "Oh man, I'm definitely gonna have to open mine when I get home." I have a couple, one or two other Ben Nevis open.
mhm,
I think I have some WS bottling, which
yep.
is okay. It's got a little more sherry than I would like. But the one thing I would probably say is my understanding is that Ben Nevis has said they are no longer going to be selling casks to independent bottlers.
Yes, that was a
And
headline as
that's
well.
I mean, that's unfortunate for a number of reasons. Now, maybe they plan on expanding their own single malt range, and maybe we'll start seeing more Ben Nevis's being released as official bottlings. I hope that's what it is, and I hope they're not just keeping it to again release it as Japanese blends or whatever.
Mhm.
But the other flip side to that is, and this will be a mini rant, it makes me more mad about all of these independent bottlers releasing 4, 5, 8 year old Ben Nevis bottlings because like no, let them get older. Let them. We're not going to have these things anymore, or as
Mhm.
often. They're going to come to an end at some point, and so it's I don't know. It always rubs me the wrong way when I see those 6-year-old, especially when they're in like super heavily when they're super heavily cask influenced. It
Yeah,
where you
so
can't really even taste the Ben Nevis in them anymore.
kind of touching on that, a couple of things, or one thing I have heard relatively recently is that the reason for that is that like Ben Nevis's spirit like is kind of a blank canvas, so it absorbs the cask. It gets the cask notes really, really fast and really, really quickly.
Hmm.
Uh, so that if that's the case, then these younger cask influenced whiskeys make sense because the longer you sit in it, it could start to uh, just maybe become too much
Yeah,
if it's absorbing that much cask influence.
yeah, I can see that. I had a bottle of it was like a 5-year-old Adelphi, and it was as black as Coca-Cola. So,
Hmm.
like, there was no way that
Sure.
that barrel wasn't, like, a third full of sherry. Like,
Yeah,
there's
more
no way.
sherry than whiskey. Yeah.
And I've seen other ones like that. The SMWS bottling that I have is, it's finished, I think, in second fill Oloroso, and even being second fill, it's 9 years old, I wanna say.
Hmm.
It's got a pretty heavy sherry influence, and for so that it makes sense, I guess is
Hmm.
what I'm saying. But still, I know what that bourbon cask, Ben Nevis with some age on it.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it needs to be be refill casks, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like I just
Mhm.
know it's like so good. Even this 10-year-old,
Yeah.
which I think is primarily bourbon casks, is just such a delight to
Yes.
drink. It is actually just very good. So
Absolutely. Yeah. No. I've got two SNWS bottles as well. Both pretty young. One's 11. One's 8. And then uh, I still remember when I found Ben Nevis was we picked you picked up we found one of those 96 independents at a Binny's, and I grabbed a second one as well. We both went home with it, and I opened mine right away. And I believe, at least at the time, you had yours still sealed, and I sent it to you, and
yeah,
like it was like we were like flabbergasted at not necessarily at how good it was,
it
because
was
that I think
weird.
that grew on us a little bit, but it
Yeah,
was like the weirdest thing we'd ever tasted. Like we
at
were
that
like,
time. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
at
we didn't
that
know
time.
what it was. It was kind of gross, but like kind of
Yeah.
appealing. Um, and then
By
yeah,
that
since then that's become a fan favorite for sure.
yeah, I think by the end of that blind, I was like, "Oh, this is starting to get really good."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
those first couple sips in the nose where I was like, "What in God's name is this?"
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you went from "I don't wanna drink this anymore" to winning the blind by the
Yeah.
end of the blind.
Yeah,
That was a fun one.
yeah. Yeah, I do still have that one. I think when I got that Milroy's, 1996, I just I cracked that one open right away, so I
Mhm.
wasn't gonna have multiple. Those are definitely one bottle at a time deals, so
Yeah.
no, I actually have not, opened that one yet because, yeah, I'd like to have that available on to some degree, for
Really.
as long as I possibly can. Um, might need a couple more to make it to the end, although, who knows?
All right.
Yeah, so well, coming in at number 20, given all of that, we haven't really talked about the fact that it's ranking. It fell 3 spots, in the ranking here. And I don't know, number 20, I'm not sure if I was surprised or happy. It's my top 10 of based on its ceiling and what it can
Mhm.
be. I think a lot of the bottlings that are out there, it wouldn't be if those
Sure.
were my
Yeah.
only experience with it. But I know it can be. Number 20, I think for the most part, I'm pretty happy to see it at number 20, given that it's not really readily available outside of some relatively expensive young independent bottlings.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like this, like I feel like you kind of poke and prod and hem and haw, but I think this eventually it just kind of makes sense. Like you say, it's not the biggest, most well known name. There's not a lot of like official releases, um, but it
I think
does have this really cool reputation, kind of amongst the
yeah,
community that
yeah, I
kind of
think
lifts
if
it up.
it's one of these distilleries that if it wanted to be in the top 10 of this list, they could be.
Sure. No, I
Um,
completely agree. Yeah.
they have the whiskey to do it, is I think what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
um, they've relied on the independent bottlers. I think they do a good job. Again, I kind of wish we'd get maybe some more like 15-year-old refill bourbon casks or something like
Oh
that.
man,
But
that would be.
um, something that's not going to be ridiculously expensive. But it is what it is. And just keep I what some of those bottles that I've just been adding to carts have been like 9 or 10-year-old Benevises that are just very clearly probably refill casks. They're extremely pale and lightly colored, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Ugh," those are those are hard to walk away from because I don't think I've had one of those yet, and I would really like to. Maybe one of these days, or the next time I bite the bullet and buy some stuff from overseas, I'll have to grab one of those and
Yeah, yeah.
make up my mind. All right.
that-
Well, why don't we move on to number 19 in
Okay.
Glencadam. This one dropped 3 spots as well. Um, strong opinions on Glencadam?
No, no, I mean, yes and no. So my main experience is with the 10, which I actually do have here. Got my Glencadam 10, almost gone. Maybe two or three pours out of that left, and I just adore um this release. And it's in terms of the like sort of like core range 10-year-old bourbon barrel stuff. It's my favorite. Um, which I'm sure some people from the community will be booing me. And what what
I am
about
sure
Air?
you do, yeah.
What about Aaron 10? I like Glencadam 10 better. So y'all can y'all can roast me if you want. So,
Oh,
um,
you're
but
getting
beyond the 10, I have not had a lot of experience with it. You see a lot of Glencadam really in the states, other than the NAS one. I feel like I know release. I think I've seen
Andalusia Reserve or something like that?
something like that. Yeah, I've seen that, and I've seen the 10. Here in like the Chicagoland area, I mean, I'm sure it's around, but uh, not very often at all.
Yeah, I've had the 10 and the 15. You're right, the 10 is absolutely fantastic. It is almost certainly going to be, one of the next core range bottlings that I pick up. I just grabbed some, uh, Bruichladdich stuff, Classic Laddie and Port Charlotte 10, but at some point, probably before the end of the year, I'll have another bottle of the 10. I did prefer the 10 over the 15.
Hmm.
The 15 was good, but at least at that time, this would have been, oh, a no, I think it was probably before I moved to San Diego, so it's probably been almost 2 years now, since I've had it on the shelf, and, I miss it. It's good. But, yeah, I
Mm,
think Aaron 10, I think, Deanston 12 is also, primarily all bourbon casks, I believe.
yeah.
So
Plan.
it's in
And
there, although I would say that the Glencadam's a bit more of like a malt bomb.
yeah, hmm agree with
And
that.
yeah, but it's fantastic. It's delicious. I think it was getting a lot of praise a couple years ago. I think people kind of discovered it, and it's probably a good reason why it's sitting up this high. But yeah, I'm happy to see it still hanging out up here. Maybe the rest of their range. I think they were mothballed for a little while, so some of their older expressions they had some other more cask influence things that were kind of discontinued. But it looks like they're
Yeah,
bringing some of those back now.
and I say they just brought, I think it was the 18 back
And yeah,
after being discontinued for a couple of years,
yes.
which I believe there was some controversy around them bringing that back because of the pricing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely, kind of amongst I think some of the online community. It came out well right now it's 135 pounds on Whiskey Exchange, which comes out to about 170-ish dollars, somewhere in there. That would include tax. So it's up there.
Yeah, on the
It,
higher end, but yeah, like as we've kind of been mentioning, maybe not as of the last months to a year, not quite so crazy.
it's been surpassed by like the Bruichladdich bottles that just came out are both more expensive than that. The 18, the Bruichladdich and the Port Charlotte,
Well, yeah, they're both higher ABVs though.
there are higher ABVs as well. Although I guess
Yeah,
it's debatable whether
take
that should
that for
be on.
what do you think it's worth?
So the 18, it's definitely still on the high end. It's been surpassed by some of these newer bottlings. But yeah, you're right. It's one of these examples like Talisker 18 that people were disappointed in or upset at to some degree, and now the rest of the market has kind of caught up, and they aren't these outliers at this point. So
Yeah, but, and just to be clear, neither you nor me, I have tried the 18, so
no,
we can't speak to whether it's
yeah,
worth it.
it's definitely one that I mean I would love to have one, but I haven't really even seen reviews on it. I haven't
Mhm.
taken the time to go look up any reviews. I haven't seen any of my regular rotation do a review on that
Yeah,
yet.
which kind of I think brings us back to the list in that I think the 10 is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here
Mhm.
for the reason
Oh,
it's at
yeah.
19. Um,
Yeah.
beyond that, like you almost like you said, we don't hear about it, at least over here, that often.
Yeah.
And I know like people have been upset at the distillery over the last year or two. So um that's gotta be the 10, just kind of carrying it.
I would definitely probably suggest that the 10 is doing a heck of a lot of the lifting to get them all the way up to number 19. And we'll see as they, kind of flesh out their core range, how or some of their special releases. Like I said, I think they came out with some other cask influenced versions. Haven't seen a ton of reviews on that. Maybe some mixed opinions on what I have seen, but
Mm.
um, you know, uh, I think Glencadam for the people that love Glencadam seem to really love the bourbon cask
Yeah,
influenced version.
the fruity
So
malt wine. Yep.
yeah, it does really well on bourbon casks. So probably a lot more exploring I need to do with Glencadam to make up my mind on whether it's a top 10 distillery. Because remember, this is the amount of
Yes.
people that had it as a top 10 distillery, which is impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's jump into number 18,
Yes.
Edredauer. So just Edredauer, pretty small distillery. I think I just looked them up and they were 260,000 liters capacity, although it's actually like two distilleries now. They like just built
Yeah, there's a
another
second
distillery.
building. Yeah.
They make both Edredauer and then the Balakin peated line.
Yep.
But you are a pretty huge Edredauer
I
fan.
am a huge Edgedower fan. Absolutely in my top 10. I would absolutely in my top 5. And that also brings us to the first pour of the night for me. I am drinking official range. This is Caledonia.
Mm,
Uh,
classic.
46% Edgewood Hour 12. Pretty dark color, although maybe a little dark, maybe not quite as dark as the camera looks like there, but um, yeah, 46%, all the right stats and specs. Yeah, I love Edgewood Hour. I love how well it takes on cask influence, but it's still pretty dirty, pretty meaty. Definitely a big, bold, a pretty bold spirit. Yeah, no, definitely tiny distillery. At least, especially compared to older distilleries. I know there are some of the new distilleries that are pretty small, but
Yeah.
uh,
Edgedar's
no,
been all. Yeah.
I love Edgewood Hour. I think I have six different of the 10 or 11-year-old releases. They release like a 10 or 11-year-old um, in a bunch of different
Mm.
casks every year. They have a whole line of them. Usually there's 5 to 6 different casks. They're all 10 to 11 years old in a different cask type. And I think
Yeah,
I've got
they do
go
have
ahead.
some older ones as well. They have like there's like I was tempted by a 19-year-old Madeira
Yes, yeah,
mature.
they do have some higher end ones. Definitely much smaller outturns. Um, and I don't know how much of it actually makes it like to the shelves over here, but yeah,
Mm.
usually like in dedicated shop like Benny's or Total Wine, you especially lately find the 10 to 11-year-old cask strength releases. Um, and yeah, when I just want a big, meaty, heavy sherry bomb, just to kind of just for that kind of a mood, that Edgedour is on the top of my list, absolutely. And yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah, I'm a fan too. I think recently I didn't pour well, first off, I didn't pour this, but I got one of the
Mm,
bourbon Abisco decanters from a few years back,
I
and,
still want. I have a bunch of different Edgedours. I still need a bourbon cask. I have not found a bourbon cask yet.
yeah, it is pretty tasty. But I think maybe I mentioned this in, one of the previous episodes, I'm not sure, but, uh, Edgedour and even a lot of sherries, I kinda went through this phase where they just tasted super, super herbal, like
Mm,
black tea, aniseed. So that, like, dirty sherry, like, took on, like, this other type of flavor,
hmm
and I wasn't, like, digging it as much. I'm hoping I've had a few other sherry whiskeys lately, and it seems like maybe I'm getting through that phase. I've gone through this and a number of other like, bitter was one. I had to go through that phase where everything tasted bitter to me,
mm.
and but it's just I don't know, the palate just decides, "Yeah, all this is gonna taste like you're chewing on a tea bag now." And it's like, "Okay, well, I
That's
hope this
unfortunate.
I hope this goes away pretty soon."
That's no good. You can't have that.
But but I so right now, I'm probably actually enjoying my Balakin bottles more than just my Edgedour bottles because I don't get it as much with
Okay.
the heavily peated stuff. However,
Okay.
I just read in the Malt Whiskey Yearbook and me brushing up on some of these distilleries that last year they didn't do any peated whiskey because they can't buy the malt.
Really?
So, yeah,
Did not know.
so they must have been sourcing their peated malt from either Port Ellen or Glenesk or one of these
Dia-
big.
uh, Diageo, I know that they
Yeah, I
stopped.
know Port Ellen started to restrict like, seriously cut back on the amount of peated malt that they were going to be selling
Hmm
to other distilleries because, well, Port Ellen is reopening, and they've expanded a huge number of their distilleries. They built, Rose Isle, which is a massive, uh, just whiskey manufacturing plant, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So some of these other distilleries that source uh, peated malt that they don't have their own malting floors, which most distilleries these days do not.
Yeah,
Um, said that they were really struggling to get enough peated malt to actually keep up with production. So hopefully, I don't know
that's
if
a shame.
hopefully they get that sorted out because I do enjoy the Balikins quite a bit.
Mhm.
But them
Yeah,
being a super small distillery, they probably don't have maybe a ton of leverage. I mean, Signatory is their owner, so maybe Signatory
exactly. I
has
was just about to point that
leverage.
out. Which there have been a lot of interesting going ons with independent bottlers who own distilleries lately.
Mm,
Um, between them and Ben Romick and Thompson
Gordon
Brothers and Dornick, like that's been kind of becoming a bigger topic lately.
yeah, these bigger independent bottlers have been diversifying their portfolios and starting up distilleries or buying them.
Mhm.
Cadenheads and Springbank are owned by the same company.
And, yep, yep.
Signatory owns Edredar. I think they're the only ones that they actually own, but Gordon MacPhail own Ben Romick and one of the new distilleries.
The Cairn, is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
that sounds right. Yeah, the Cairn.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so some of these bigger ones are because their supply of casks have been getting cut off. Famously, Gordon MacPhail says we're not even buying any casks anymore,
Hmm. Which is wild.
which yeah is was stunning that they just said not worth the hassle. We're gonna we're just gonna sell what we've got, and uh, they could always change their mind. They're not going to run out of whiskey for a long time, so maybe it's just one of these things that
Yeah.
they said we're going to put all of our resources into getting our distilleries up and running and make sure that we're on a little bit more stable footing and we're not relying on other
Yep.
companies like Diageo who can just decide you're not getting barrels, you're not getting peated malt, you're not, it's all ours. Go away. I don't blame them at all if they have that kind of ability to just acquire or
Yeah,
start up a distillery.
and it's one thing that can also it'll be interesting just to wait and see in like the next 10, 15 years. We've been getting all these announcements lately. Gordon MacPhail, Port Ellen with the maltings. We just mentioned Nika no longer giving Ben Nevis away. Um, like, is that just like a sign of like the economic pressure right now? And in 5 or 10 years, they might go back if like when like the boom or like the bubble bursts. Or is this just how it's going to be? That's just
Mhm.
interesting. And are we going to keep going further into this sort of
Yeah.
almost isolationist type of economy?
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thing. I don't want to be a doomer. The Ben
Hmm.
Nevis thing bothers me because it's one of my favorite distilleries, and without the independent bottlers, I wouldn't know about Ben Nevis. Although, like Nika from the Barrel, I think is a solid whiskey, and turned out
Yeah.
that's a big chunk of that stuff is probably Ben Nevis. Well, that probably explains that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is worrisome. Hopefully, this is just maybe we're at the height of this whiskey boom. These distilleries have been scrambling to catch up. A lot of them have expanded, but they don't see the benefit of that for another 10 years or so.
Yep.
And maybe they're just being a little extra precious. And some of them may be looking to the future and say, well, maybe even we wouldn't even use those casks for our own bottlings, but we can hold on to them for 20 years and sell them for crazy amounts of money.
Yeah.
Um, s- s-
Absolutely.
so yeah, it is interesting. At the same time, it seems like all these small independent bottlers are popping up all the time. So there's still like interest. There's still people that are trying to start these companies up and they're getting casks from somewhere. So somebody's selling them stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh, I think it's going to be okay. It might get a little weird.
Yeah.
It'll probably be certain distilleries that
Well,
disappear for a while, but
plus with the new distillery boom, in 10, 15 years, we'll have 30 whatever it is new distilleries to work with. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many casks those distilleries sold off, because they probably sold off quite a bit
Yeah, to get
because
the money.
that was quick income to
Yeah.
keep the lights on and to start paying their employees and paying investors and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that if we already see independent bottlings of like Ardent American, and although those are
Mhm.
usually that's another one. Adelphi owns
Oh,
Ardent
yeah,
American.
that's true. Yep.
Um, so I think those are mostly Although Impex did art in
Yes,
American bottling.
I have a 6-year-old Impex.
Hmm.
Um, and I forget, is Impex the actual bottler? Is that the name of the bottler, or is that a line? I forget.
Impex
Uh,
is yeah, they were an importer and they started their own independent bottling
that's
line a
great.
few
That's
years
great.
back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's their own bottle
Yeah,
and it says Impex on it. Yeah.
and that Art American, we'll talk about it in the next episode, but
Yeah.
that's a banger of a bottle. So. Anyway, irrelevant.
So, all right, so Edgeworth, being a small distillery, being one of these dirtier, heavier, at times even challenging. My first bottle was a 12 Caledonia
Mhm.
12, and yeah, when I first opened that up and started drinking it, it was another one of those what the hell is this sort of moments. And
Yeah,
it's like, well, I don't hate it, but it's like this is a lot.
in the class
And
of
by
its
the
own.
time I got to the halfway point of that bottle, it was like, oh my god, this is fantastic. So, so the fact that it's up here at number 18 again shows that size when it size doesn't matter, I guess. Kick up halfway through that, I'm like, that don't say that. But I had already committed. So, but 200, yeah, 260,000 liters. That's like double the capacity what it was before.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
super
no,
small,
it's
but still able to make enough of an impression on enough people to climb all the way up to number 18.
yeah, I'm thrilled to see it in the top 20. It's definitely. I'm, uh, I'm tempted to say it's a surprise, but I don't think it's a surprise. Again, if you just the reputation, if you like it, you absolutely love it. It's probably not for everybody, but um, especially just with the reputation of it, it does a lot with the quote unquote small amount of whiskey it puts out every year. So um, it's a pleasant surprise. I'm happy to see it, and like I said, it's in my top 5. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think I'd put it in my current top 10, although it could it could easily be there because I the quality's there, the way they do things is right. It's just whatever the current phase of my palate isn't loving their super heavy cask and fluent style, but hopefully I get back to uh maybe a year or two ago when I was head over heels in love with them as well.
I'll get you there. I'll get you there.
Yeah. The no, it was it Burgundy or Bordeaux? Well, you sent me I think you sent me a blind of of 4 different
Yeah, I sent
cask
you an
strengths.
all Edgedower blind. Yeah,
I think Madeira was, like, 2nd, but it was Burgundy or Bordeaux, I can't remember.
Bur-
That was, like, fantastic,
the
that one.
Burgundy, I think it was.
That sounds right.
Yep,
Alright.
that was a fun one.
So, I'm rooting for Edgedour. Hopefully they can get some peated malt from somebody, uh,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. And I didn't even really talk about Balakan. I have 2 Balakan bottles myself, and yeah, they're
mhm,
again absolute trips, but they're good.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Balakan still.
Hmm.
But why don't we move on to number
Next one.
17, Kleinlich,
Oh
distillery I
boy,
have words to say about.
yes.
So I guess it's my turn.
Take it away.
This will be my
Take it
second
away.
dram. Um, it's SMWS bottling from a couple of years ago. This is number 26.173, galloping through lush meadows. 8 years old, first fill ex bourbon, 61.5%.
Mm.
So with a lot of these, and yes, I get tired of I know what it is now, but like when I first when I first got them, I couldn't remember which distillery was what, so I
Yeah,
put the little
yeah.
label.
I just write distilleries on my bottles. I'm not
Yeah,
dealing with their numbers.
I bought a label maker, so I'm just getting my money's worth out of the damn thing. But um, so yeah, that's what I'm drinking, and 61.5%. All of these single age statement, high ABV SMWS bottlings are usually firecrackers. They are fireballs. So I
Mhm.
put water in basically all of them, and I don't mess around when I do so. I've had this one uh, settling down after a pretty good splash of water, And but this one
Nice.
is pretty good when you get it down to a proof that isn't singeing your nose hairs and whatnot. It's a solid bottle.
Very nice.
But so Kleinlich, I am semi surprised that this isn't my top 10 distilleries. Easily. This is in terms of what I know, this is like Ben Nevis. In terms of what I know they have in their warehouse, in terms of the whiskeys that exist out there of Kleinlich, this is top 2 distillery for me. There are days.
Wow.
Now, part of this is I have probably gotten to at least sample more older Kleinlich bottles and I have Springbank bottles, which would be my number 1, or what I would normally say would be not my number 1. However, Kleinlich makes really, really good whiskey. But and of course, Diageo being the owners,
There's that name again.
um, rain on my parade every chance they get because I was having a little warm up dram before we started this, because getting things ready, and it was my more recent purchase of a Kleinlich 14, their official bottling, their one and only regular release, which is known for some batch inconsistencies. If it's just in terms of some flavor notes and flavor profiles, and you're just using some different casks, and it's a little different every time, that's fine. That bravo for doing that. But the bottle I have now is complete trash, and like it's a bad, it's like a bad whiskey that doesn't taste anything like Kleinlich, and it's so frustrating to have a distillery there. You know that there are barrels in their warehouse that are just probably some of the best whiskey that has ever been made, period.
On the planet. Yep.
Yes. And the distillery owners not only throw you a pittance themselves, that sometimes it's like they throw you stale, old, and rotten breadcrumbs. It's like they're not even like fresh crumbs. They're just, yeah, the crumbs are moldy.
The crumbs.
However, I have had a good bottle of Kleinlich 14. So yes, they can be good, but yeah, of course, there's no batch numbers or anything like that. It's colored. That's another one. I get the coloring aftertaste on this one. I think they've got it. Just kind of get that dull, bitter, sticky thing at the back of your tongue
Sure.
that I get on like heavily colored whiskeys. Sometimes, at least. Um, anyway, it's a bad version. This 9-year-old or 8-year-old, sorry, is good. It's okay. It's young. It's a little fiery, like I said. Waxiness is not at its peak, but it's there. It's nice
Sure.
fruity waxiness. What is there? So if I say this is one of my top 2 distilleries, it's hard because I can't say, oh yeah, just go buy a Kleinlich,
Yeah.
even an independent bottling of it, and you're gonna love it. I can't say that. It's because they might go out and buy one, and it's like it's either meh, okay, or it's actually bad. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you take over. I need a break. I'm getting mad.
No, that's exactly what I hear. I think you said it's in your top 2. Yeah, I think that's kind of going off of ceiling, kind of echoing that sentiment of the
It's
ceiling of it's in your top 2.
yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah, so I've had bottle of the 14 early in my journey. I liked it well enough. It again. I I had heard a lot of hype about Kleinlich. Um, I was maybe not quite knowledgeable to differentiate between the officials and the independents and everything. I just gotten a lot of hype about it and grabbed a bottle of 14 and drank it. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then you had sent me something, uh, and that's what opened my eyes. I'm like, oh, this is not what I was getting in the 14.
Right.
And then so I've also bought an SMWS bottle. I think it's a 17, and
Mm.
that is a absolute fantastic. Yeah, like it maybe doesn't hit like the epic heights, but man,
Yeah.
it's a damn good bottle to drink. Um, so I really enjoy that, kind of savoring that one. That one's getting kind of low. But other than that, my Kleinlish journey has kind of been through stuff you sent me.
Mm.
Uh, so usually it's pretty good stuff. But yeah, I again, it's not a bottle you see even independents like on the shelf. I guess you do see it. At least I see, I do see it, I guess. But again, they're usually lower age statements. Um,
Yeah, you'll see them in that 11 to 14
yeah.
year a lot, and
Um,
then like very rarely like a 30-year-old for $4,000 or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. And then yeah, so I haven't pulled the trigger on many of those just again because of the inconsistency. If it was something like Kleinlish is one of the independents where I'll it depends on who the bottler is,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think. If it's a bottler I can trust, or is it just kind of like a
Well,
random
that's
crap.
interesting you say that because I don't see signatory bottlings much, and at least in terms of getting a good, solid, representative whiskey, signatory, I think can't be beat really. Now, I
Sure.
haven't
Yeah.
had all the little smaller bottlers in the UK or that are
Mhm.
available in Europe, but I mean, that signatory strength is you are going to get something that is at least good
Yeah.
and fairly representative. They're not afraid to bottle bourbon casks and things like that. Faxing our super dark bottle of signatory is fairly rare,
Hmm.
at least in my experience. Not that they don't exist, they
Which
definitely do,
which
but
is funny that they own Edgered Hour, but
yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, their Edgered Hour bottlings are certainly an exception,
say that their actual spirits
but
usually Coca-Cola, but yeah, anyway.
but just to illustrate, like, the different type of experiences you can have. Now, neither of these bottles are bad. However, I have 2 signatory bottlings of 20-year-old Kleinlich. One of them is 56%, and one of them is 43.
Hmm.
They were distilled on the same day, matured in the same type of cask, and the cask number on the bottles are sequential.
So
They were bottled maybe a few months apart, I believe.
one casket just had a hole in it, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, this is back when Signatory did 43% bottlings, so they
Oh, that's not cask strength. Okay, okay.
yeah, yeah, no, it's they brought it down. The 56% is good.
Mhm.
The 43% is s stunning, stunningly good,
Wow. Yeah, you don't hear that a lot.
and
Yeah, awesome.
it's and yeah, and I've had other people who know their whiskey, taste them side by side, and say, "Yeah, the 43% is better." Like, clearly better. Distilled on
Jeez.
the same day, same type of cask, sat next to each other in the warehouse. One is 13% ABV lower, though you would expect
Yeah,
and I've
yeah.
added water to the higher one to try to see if I can get it to be as good. No, that
Jeez.
43 percenter is head and shoulders above the 56%. And
That's crazy. Yeah,
it's
you never hear that.
yeah.
Um, Makes you wonder, like, if they watered down the wrong one, maybe.
Maybe. I don't
Maybe
know.
they should have left that one higher. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred them both to be 50 whatever percent,
Mhm.
but, I bought one of those bottles in Denver and one in Chicago, and I bought the one in Denver, that was the lower ABV one, and then the other
Sure.
one was at Binny's, and I think I looked at the website, and I think it even listed the cast number. I'm like, "Holy crap, that's the one that sat next to this one in the warehouse." It's, like, literally the next number, and,
Yeah,
yeah, they're very distinct differences. The 56% is good, but yeah, that 43% is up there in terms of good Clynelish bottles that I've had.
nice.
So, I'm happy to see it up this high. It's another distillery that under the right ownership could be top 10 easily.
Oh, I would
We have
imagine.
we haven't really talked about why. So they have this very distinctive waxy quality, this kind of
Mhm.
white candle wax, paraffin wax sort of thing. And once you get hooked on that, you just it's it's fantastic. Like
Yeah.
it's such a unique character. There are other quote unquote waxy distilleries that have varying levels of waxiness. Some of them are more of a beeswax. Some of them are on that kind of candle wax sort of spectrum, but
Mhm.
Kleinlich is the king of waxy distilleries, and when that thing is hitting, when that note is hitting, it's so good. But
Mhm.
it's a coin flip as to whether you're going to get it or not.
Exactly.
So
This is the highest Diageo distillery, is it not? There's none in the top 10
yeah,
or 15.
I realize I haven't put us back on our faces, which is probably preferable for most people. But yes, I believe you are correct. No Diageo is in the top 10. So this is the highest rated Diageo owned distillery out of the 132 total distilleries. It's coming in at number
Which again
17.
is interesting to me because again they don't again so official releases they just have the 14 other than like the special releases
Yeah,
like
they do special releases once in a while.
yeah but like they release it with the same as the Lagavulin and the Talisker those all kind of
Mhm.
come out in the same thing.
Yeah.
So for the fact that it's above Lagavulin and Talisker especially really I think speaks to the legendary
Yeah.
those older bottlings that the reputation that it's got for like the actual liquid but like it's not even treated like it's not treated badly in the same sense as Lagavulin and Talisker are. Like they almost
Yeah.
don't release it. Like they almost don't.
Well, even
Like
their
you know what I mean?
14-year-old, we didn't mention this either. It's 46%.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a rarity
Uh,
for
for
Diageo.
Diageo, it's almost like, well, yeah, we'll give you 46%, but to prove a point, we're gonna give you the worst 46% whiskey we possibly can.
Does
Yeah,
it
so
say?
it's
Does it?
insane.
Does it say not chill filtered?
No.
So that
No, no,
they're
absolutely
they're
not. No.
probably still chill filtering it.
It's they could be. Uh, I don't think like I just had that dram. It didn't come off as so thin that oh yeah, this is absolutely chill
Hmm.
filtered. But it's obviously colored. And because
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
dark,
No.
it's fairly dark. There's no
That I
sherry
know.
notes at
That
all.
I know.
And again, sometimes if they put enough of it in there, I do get an
Mhm.
aftertaste that is I only get with heavily colored whiskeys like Dalmore, things like that.
Sure. So yeah, no,
Um, yeah,
its place,
go ahead.
it's just its placement relative to the other ones is interesting to me because
Mhm.
I do feel it's a little bit almost ignored by Diageo compared to some of their bigger names.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
they
that's
must.
grounds. Go ahead.
I mean, Diageo does do a solid, or they have up to this point with some of their distilleries. Coelho was one last week that we talked about,
Hmm.
where they will give they will sell barrels to independent bottlers to kind of keep the those distilleries reputation up. Again, why they can't do it themselves, I don't know. Why they just refuse to do that, don't know.
Hmm.
I guess it's just easier for them to just sell the barrel to somebody else. But the Coelho's a great example alongside of it, where another legendary independent bottling or whiskey that is available all over the place.
Hmm.
Independent bottling in every cask you can imagine, and it's always good.
Yeah, and
Um,
I do know that there are rumors that Diageo has stopped selling Kleinlich to
I've
bottlers.
heard some.
Again, I don't think there's been an announcement. We don't know that,
Yeah,
but that seems to be a rumor.
yeah, and there's not a ton of Kleinlich, and when it gets released, it gets snapped up pretty fast. K&L had a bottle of 16-year-old that they came out with, I think over the holidays, and I mean, I got one. Again, it feels like a precious bottle to me. So with
Hmm.
some of these distilleries, I don't just open everything as soon as I get it. As I finish a bottle, I'll open another one and
Mm.
just try to keep a decent queue, so I know that I don't have to panic if Diageo decides to start being mean. But the question is, how much Clynelish is sitting in some of the warehouses
Yeah,
already purchased and that sort of thing. So
exactly. We have no idea.
we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. But yes, I have heard maybe they have stopped doing that, which would be sad because why? I mean,
Yeah,
especially now that they have Rose Isle, they can make quote unquote Clynelish whenever they want.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. The Rose Isle can make whatever kind of whiskey they want.
yeah, supposedly they can make anything at Rose Isle. So, and maybe
Mhm.
they just need to wait for more of that stuff to mature, and it's just a temporary thing. But
Sure.
yeah, it's not like there's just constantly Clynelish IBs on the shelves all over the world.
Right.
They do kind of pop up here and there, and they usually get snapped up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, any other final thoughts, or ready to?
No, I mean, like I said, I can rant. It's not. There's nothing my rant's going to do. It's not going to change anything. We just talked about 2 distilleries in the the first 4 of this episode that are capable of being top 5 on this list. No
Mm,
question.
yes. Mm.
Now, there's a lot of distilleries on this list that you could probably make that argument about, even further down, that probably have absolutely amazing whiskey sitting in their warehouses. But these are ones we get teased enough with that we know about, you know?
Yeah, it
And
it hurts. It hurts our hearts a little bit.
yeah,
There.
but glad to see it's still getting a little bit recognition. This even jumped up 2 spots, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what it says.
So it's it it passed up Edgedour and
Although, and
Glencairn.
one thing interesting note is that between Glencadam and Loch Lomond, so that's 4 spots, is a 8 vote difference. So,
Mm,
so it only
yeah,
needed 8. It only needed 7 votes to jump 2 spots. So, um,
fair enough.
interesting,
Yeah,
interesting little tight cluster there.
yeah, we didn't state it at the beginning because again, you can check out some of our previous episodes, but you can go vote on this stuff right now. It won't affect the tallies, but they will aggregate the data. They'll take a
Yeah,
snapshot every so
it,
often.
it'll
So
be counted in
you
the
can go
next.
on Dramface and get your friends to vote, or you have a Clynelish fan group or something. You get them all to vote. You can bump them up probably a few spots by yourself, but it won't be until the next time they snapshot the data, which not sure when that's going to be.
Right.
I would assume a couple times a year they'll do it, but yeah, let's move on. We are now up to number 16.
16.
Um,
Interesting entry for sure.
an interesting one. Loch Lomond is number coming in at number 16, jumped 1 spot. It looks like this is a distillery that my primary experience with this has been through 2 like virtual tastings where I kind of got 4 or 5 1 ounce samples of Loch Lomond, got online, had somebody kind of go through their sales bit. And in neither of those sessions, it's been a little while now, it's been a couple years. This is more in the pandemic kind of lockdown phase of things, I think. And it didn't do anything for me. They were good. I didn't think they were bad, but basically since then I've never bought a bottle of Loch Lomond whiskey. I know it's been kind of up and coming over the last couple years. Has some cheerleaders out there, and particularly in some of their experimental stuff, they have a bunch of different types of stills. They can make all kinds of different
Mhm.
styles of whiskey. So this is definitely one you can't put like just a blanket statement on because they can do a whole bunch of stuff, including I think it was a Glass House was a blended Scotch, but it was 100%. It was
Yeah, it's
actually
all.
it's
Yeah,
like
that's
a
all. They're all Loch Lomond
yeah.
uh, labels, but I think they, because there's different still types or something, that they had to call it a blend.
Yeah, so they
Uh,
used it was 100% malted barley, but they put it through a continuous still. But it's 100% malted barley. It's from the same distillery, but because one was in a continuous still, not a pot still, they couldn't call it. It's not a single malt. They had to call it a blend,
yeah,
which is
which is fascinating.
another. Which I get it in terms of my criticisms of the SWA. Scotch Whiskey Association. That's pretty low on the list, but
Definitely.
you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I don't I know this is an upcoming star. I don't have an opinion. I need to try some of their more contemporary stuff. I, I would like to get maybe some more of their specialty things. I know you can get like single casts and that sort of thing, but I should probably just go grab a bottle of the 12 and at least get a little bit more of a heartbeat on what they currently are doing.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm pretty similar, especially early in the journey. Reputation was kind of either negative to neutral. This was 3 or 4 years ago, and but yeah, no, definitely as I'm paying attention to sort of online and whiskey tube and reviews, uh, Loch Lomond has definitely been gaining some traction. And I hadn't owned any bottles, nor had I had any until I finally went out and I was actually going to pick up a bottle of one of the entry level ones, but they happen to have this. I think this was released a couple of years ago, but it's limited. It's a limited release from them. It's a Kerr Sellers release, so it's I guess it's 19. Actually, it doesn't say on the bottle, but for some reason, but it was like 17 or 19 years old. It's got a bunch of different like cask maturations in it. I'm not super far into it, just sort of below the shoulder, so I'm still kind of getting to know it. It's pretty good. I'm definitely enjoying it. I'm intrigued about it. But yeah, it's also kind of a distillery you kind of have to do your research on as well because there's I think by our count 4 different branded names it goes by
Yeah.
between Inchmoan and Inchmurren and Inchfad, and then there's just Loch Lomond as well.
Yeah.
And they all, I guess, have different peat levels and different still types, and it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, and they also even on independent bottlers will be the Crofton Gia or something like that.
Yeah,
It's another peated style from them. But yeah, because some of them are more heavily peated, some of them are pretty lightly peated or not peated at all. So just kind of grabbing a random bottle off the shelf because it'll say Loch Lomond and then somewhere else on the label it'll say like Inchfad or
yeah,
Inchmer
yeah,
sometimes. And you kind of got to know what you're buying, which maybe, hopefully they can either make it more clear as to what that means. Because actually I remember I on one of those virtual tastings, the sales rep who's
yeah,
giving this presentation, I asked, like, how do you tell the difference? Like, what is the actual difference between Inchmoan and Inchfad? And he could not answer the question. He didn't know. So, I mean, that might have been a training issue. I'm sure Loch
yeah,
Lomond would like him to be able to have explained that. But I was like, oh, well, even you don't know what the hell the difference is. So,
yeah.
um,
That's not good. That's not good.
but it's like, okay, it's probably like peat levels, it's maybe fermentation times, it could be a whole bunch of different stuff that
Yeah,
separates
exactly.
it, but,
So
uh
yeah, so it's to get the essence of what Loch Lomond is. I think will take you a little while to kind of explore and see what they have. Which it sounds like for both of us, we're just kind of starting figuring
mhm,
out what they're all about. But yeah, no, in terms of Dramface number 16, definitely higher than I would have expected maybe a year ago. Again, there's been getting some social traction lately, so it's not the
mhm,
most surprising.
yeah,
But yeah, Loch Lomond does seem to maybe not have the. It's surprising in the sense that Kleinlish has this huge reputation. Edredauer is this niche thing.
mhm,
Ben Nevis. These are all kind of uniquely. They have an identity that
mhm,
holds up a reputation. And
yep.
Loch Lomond is sort of a mixed bag that a couple of years ago was not thought of very highly. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I don't
I'm more fascinated than surprised that it's here, and I do want to know more. But yeah, go ahead.
no, no, yeah, I was just practicing, not just talking over you, but I was just wanted to agree with you. It doesn't I think that's the thing you could say about Loch Lomond as a brand, it doesn't have that singular identity, it experiments with things. It has different styles, it has different stills. You can't really pin it into one category, say, "Oh, it's a waxy," or, "Yes, it's a dirty sherry forward whiskey, or it's super tropical. It can be kind of anything, right? They
Mhm.
experiment with yeast, they experiment with barrel types, and I think the head guy over there, Michael Henry, he's really involved in the enthusiast community. He participates.
Yeah. Yeah, and the
Um,
fact that they're this high with that many different styles, they must be doing something
yeah,
right. So,
yeah.
yeah, I'm eager to dig more into it.
It's almost like I'm almost afraid of it being a rabbit hole that I don't want to like I want to fall into that from a whiskey lover standpoint, but also
Mhm.
like how many more rabbit holes do I
Yeah,
have to like crawl out of? But
there is kind of a sense of it's easier to just ignore that
yeah,
whole
and they're not
pile.
they're not the only distillery that probably kind of suffers that fate, especially when you're really enthusiastic and you do find some distilleries you really love. It's almost like, man, if I find another one that I really love, it's going to be a problem. You know,
Yeah.
so they're maybe they're just kind of waiting their turn for me. But yeah, I do want to start trying their stuff because it seems to be highly recommended and as indicated by this poll. I think they've even been nominated for Osmo awards and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are one I need to know more about, and that's on me to take care of that at some point here. But on to a distillery that I do have at least some experience with, and
Mhm.
coming in at number 15, top 15 now. Once ignored, now pretty ubiquitous, I would say, pretty well known. Glen
Yeah.
Glenallachie. Do you are you feeling anything immediately about Glen Glenallachie?
Yeah, so, yeah, Glenalky's, again, it's interesting for different reasons, but again, I think another really interesting one, especially coming over the next ten years or so. Glenalky was another one that kind of, in the past was, I think maybe a while ago, it was good, but I know lately it's had a reputation of being pretty middling to lower ends kind of quality. Um, and it really wasn't doing too well. And then Billy Walker bought it 5 6 years ago, whatever it's been now, and he's really revitalized that. He's taken a lot of their spirit and put it in really active casks and really kind of wild stuff,
Mhm.
um, just to kind of give the spirit a big kind of boost in flavor, and you know he kind of knows what he's working with, and he's kind of doing the best he can,
Yeah.
and he's really kind of interjecting it with a lot of cool caskings and cask types. But on top of that, he's also started laying his own spirit, which is very different from what he's been releasing lately. And in that vein, I've actually picked up his very first release. I've got the 4-year-old peated bottle here, 60.2% ABV. Yeah, it's only 4 years old, but it's Billy Walker's first release. And it's heavily peated, which makes sense for a super young whiskey. That peat can kind of cover up some of the extra spirity notes and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and it's fast. It's really interesting. It's a different kind of peated spirit than I've had before. Um, and and Billy Walker's also famous from Glendronach and a couple other distilleries.
Yeah, Benriach and Glasso were the
Henry,
3 that
yep,
he
yep.
had, yeah, that he kinda really
Um,
burst onto the scene with.
he's already shown that he can handle distilleries well. So it's gonna be really cool to see what they do again over the next 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, th it'll be really interesting to see what his ultimate vision for
Hmm.
the distillery is, because as you mentioned, when he took over the distillery and he inherited this stock that the spirit was generally, I guess this isn't my opinion, this is what I kind of understand, but the spirit itself wasn't considered to be very good, and they were in bad casks. Like, it was just
Hmm.
a distillery that was making blend fodder. They didn't really care. It wasn't good whiskey.
Yep.
And so he came in, he had all these casks. Obviously, he can't just dump them down the drain. So he begins getting all the quality casts he can, wet casts, whatever, and starts re-racking a lot of these things. And over time, he's been releasing these as uh, various age stated expressions. There's single barrels that come out that are Glenallachie branded. They have there's one. Well, I shouldn't say they're one special release, but they're their 10-year-old batch
Mhm.
cast strength. It
Yeah.
usually has a pretty good reputation.
Yeah, those are really solid. I think they're up to, like, batch 9 now, I
I
believe.
think I think they just released
Maybe 10?
11.
Are they up to 11 now? Jeez.
Well, they just released one in their new branding, and I think that was number 11.
Okay.
Yeah, I just finished batch 6.
Mhm.
So, we don't get every batch here in the States because it kinda depend like, it sits on the shelf a little bit longer here probably, and so stores don't at least I haven't seen I think I've seen batch 8, and maybe K&L has batch 10.
Mm,
Don't
okay.
quote me on it, but yeah, so we kinda get them sporadically, and, I just finished my batch 6 from a few years ago, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed that. It had a fantastic PX cask. I don't know if this was a re-rack or if this was, like, a fully matured in PX, but this was one of my favorite heavily cask influenced whiskeys that I've, like, had,
Mm, that's
really,
awesome.
and I wish I woulda bought another one of them, because I could have, but, so I've had really good experiences. The 10 was, like, good, solid, and then the bottle of the 15-year that I had was pretty disappointing.
Mm,
I've heard that the fifth and that's I'm not the only one to think
sure.
that the 15 was maybe one of their weaker releases, but apparently, what I've heard more recently is that it has gotten a bit better, which
Picked up.
is
Yeah.
good,
Okay.
obviously. But so a little bit hit or miss. There's a pretty wide range of age statements from like 8 years. I think they've released up to like a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Again, don't quote me on that, but I think they've done the
Yeah,
30.
and they've been pumping it out because
Yeah.
so you go to the store, there's a whole
Oh
there's
yeah. You'll
like 10
yeah.
different Glenallachie releases on the shelf.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
8s, 10, 12, 14, 8. Like, holy cow.
Yep. Yeah. They've
Um,
he just also. I'm sure you're probably going to mention this, but more of his spirit has been released as the Meikle Tour line. Some of that has just recently hit the States here. I've passed on it. I'm kind of out of the 4 or 5-year-old whiskey game right now.
mhm,
So I'm willing to give some stuff a little bit more time. Shelf space is limited as it is,
yeah,
but so Glenallachie is one that I haven't dove fully into because I know, like, I like what they've been doing, but obviously, I don't know how many times I can say it on my channel, but like the heavy cask influence stuff is I would enjoy,
mhm,
but I'm not gonna go out of my way to stock my shelves full of it or to buy every single version I can. So it's one I'm keeping an eye on and looking forward to see what Billy Walker's actual vision for it is because I have
yeah,
faith at the end of the day he's gonna be putting out some pretty good stuff. And the Meikle tour has gotten very good feedback from the community as far as I understand.
yeah, from what I've heard, yeah.
For 5-year-old whiskey, it's I think it's fairly heavily cask influenced as well, and some of it's peated, but or all of it, I'm not sure.
I think the whole line's peated, yeah.
Makes sense. Peated whiskey does work
Mhm,
better at younger ages, as
yep.
you mentioned. But yeah, so if you love, I think you either love Glenallachie or you're kind of indifferent to it. So the fact that it's up here this high and it looks like it has raised 6 spots, which I'm gonna guess is the Meikle Tour release because it did get pretty good.
No, it's down 2. That's Glenallachie.
Oh, that's Craig Ellicky.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It's pretty small on my screen because I don't have the actual window up, but yes, you are right. Glenallachie has fallen. Craig Ellicky, which looks exactly the same sitting to my 41-year-old eyeballs. But yeah, I'm a little surprised it's that high, but at the same time, it's been like if you love sherry, if you're a sherry
yeah,
or cask influenced person, you
especially right
probably
now.
aren't a fan of Glenallachie,
Yeah,
though.
especially right now. This has to be at least one of the higher, like, primarily sherried distilleries.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of which ones were higher in the top. I could there's any in the top 10 that are like predominantly sherried.
yeah,
Um,
actually, not really any to be honest. I mean, there are certain Bunnahabhain,
Okay.
which is number 3. But, yeah, then it's kinda Craig Craigellachie. Obviously, everything in between does do sherried whiskey,
Yeah,
but
no, yeah, it's
the
like the distillery is
stereotypical
known for it. But yeah, Bunnahabhain. Um, but yeah, so that's interesting that despite maybe the quality of the initial liquid, that he's been able to do this with the stocks they had. So, um,
yeah, he
and
seems
I,
to be
you know,
getting better at it
and
too.
it makes sense. You know, like I said, I've had one of those single barrels. I've had a couple of the 10-year-old cask strengths, and they're good. You know,
Yeah.
definitely, absolutely no complaints. So yeah, looking to see where Glenallachie goes, just like several of these other distilleries, what they're going to do.
Yeah, if I might pick up another 10 cast strength or something at some point if the mood strikes me right, because I don't have I think I do actually I ended up somehow with a second bottle of the batch 6. I think I got it for someone, but they already had one, so I just
Mm.
whatever. It was a thing. I think I have one tucked away somewhere, but I figured I'll just hold on to that for later, and maybe one of these days I'll pick up another one of those 10 cast strength versions. And slightly tempted to get another 15 to see if it redeems itself, but a part of me just wants to wait because I really did not enjoy uh, the one that I happened to get. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
anyways, why don't we move to the next one? Who I already tried to spoil Craig Craigellachie, which is
Craig
up 2
Gallagher.
spots. Craig Craigellachie, Space Cider, Doers owned. Um,
Hmm.
known for their worm tub distillation, 46%, 13-year-old, non-chill filtered, natural color, all that good stuff. One that again in my mind is quote unquote underrated, but it's on everyone's underrated list. So at some
Yeah.
point it's no longer underrated.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's coming in at number 14 here says that for for a distillery owned by a major blending company, this is extremely high. Like this is
Yeah.
a really great showing and shows that, when you let a good distillery release good whiskey, it can, it, you know, it can have rewards. I haven't had the 13-year-old Boss Armagnac, but I've already gone through a couple bottles of the
Mm.
13,
Yep.
the
Yep.
regular 13. They're also pretty readily available in independent bottlings,
Yep.
and their 17 is it's not cheap here. I think it's up around 150 bucks, but it's very good. We got to share a bottle up in the Canadian wilderness last
Yes,
year. It
we did.
was
Yes, we
very,
did.
delicious. And their 23-year, I think that was discontinued for a little while. I don't know if it's back or not. I got a bottle of a while back, got a good deal on it. And so I've been very carefully sipping on that one. Because yeah,
Mhm.
it's 23 years old at this point. It's tough to buy those bottles these days, even if they're available, because they're pricey. But
Yep.
yeah, what do you think about Craig Craigellachie?
Yeah, Krygaliki, uh, again, it feels kind of like, that it's got that underrated kind of vibe to it. Really, just really solid, good
Mhm,
juice that I've had. I've got two independent bottlings. One's better than the other. I am
mhm.
drinking the better one at the moment. It's a Old Particular 14-year sherry butt.
Ah,
Um, Dougie Lang. Yep, definitely kind of starting to hit the heel on this one, getting close to it. But
so
yeah, no, it's yeah. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, is your other independent bottling the one I got you, the Mossburn?
The Mossburn. Yeah, that one.
Uh,
It's
well, the reason why you have it is I went to a shop in Denver and these were $45 or something like that, and I'm
mm.
like, "Well, I'm gonna grab one of those and screw it, I'll get Kevin ones." He didn't ask for it or anything, I just showed up and be like, "Here, I"
No,
he's
I
like
was stoked because I've had good experiences with Krogeligi. That one again, it has struggled a little bit. I wonder if
it's an interesting cask, it's a ru ruby port hogshead.
Okay, a port hogshead. Yeah, yeah, you don't
Yeah,
see that a lot.
and
Um,
it's like 13 years old too, I wanna say, or it's up to 13, probably 12, but
yeah, something like that. Um, but yeah, no, it's you get a bit of that. I think a bit of a waxy note, maybe a little bit different than Kleinlich, but you could kind of in that
yeah, yeah, it kinda sits
somewhat
in
of a
there.
comparable note,
Mhm.
at least in the stuff I've had. Yeah, really good, really solid. Is in my experience a pretty solid go-to. Um, and again, this I did pick up one of the exceptional casks. It's a 24-year-old.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
and again, that one has also kind of struggled a little bit for me,
Mhm.
which is super disappointing. But but again, that doesn't really deter me because the other the standby experiences I've had have been really good. So um, I think maybe I've had a little bit of less than average luck, but I still enjoy it. Sorry to stutter there a little bit, but I'm
No,
trying
yeah,
to.
I think I know what you're saying. I haven't I agree. They've been really solid, um, but the 17-year-old was really nice, really good.
Hmm.
The 23, I've barely really tapped into too much. It seems pretty solid. I know the 23 for a lot of people is absolutely phenomenal. I haven't gotten there yet. I got the 19-year-old exceptional cask. Again, it's fairly heavily sherried. I think we both
Hmm.
agreed that that one was significantly better than the
Yeah,
24-year-old.
yeah. I've sent you the 24, and it was third or fourth in the flight.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, the 19-year-old is of that. I think they more recently did like an 11. I think I've
Mm.
seen some reviews of like an 11-year-old or maybe even 9-year-old or something like that, but
Oh wow.
so they are still doing these exceptional cask releases,
Hmm.
but, with maybe some lower age statements on them, which, hey, would I jump on it and buy it? Probably not. But, I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoy Craig Ellikie, but yeah, I don't know if I've had one just completely just blow me away yet.
The core range especially, I've had nothing but great
Yeah.
experiences. So
Yeah,
definitely
it's
recommend.
one where I think the core range is maybe where you should start, especially the
Yeah.
13 and 17, if you can swing the 17, I would say do it. I did pick up a Thompson Brothers independent bottling. I think it's 13 years old as well. That I'm looking forward to getting into, but
Sure.
it's, because the Thompson Brothers do good work, so
Hmm.
I'm hoping it's a good example, and maybe that'll be the one to completely put me over, but in terms of value, the regular 13, I've heard the Boss Armagnac version is solid. I haven't had that one yet,
Yeah,
but
me neither. I
but
do
the
see it on the shelf.
yeah,
It's always on the list of possibilities, but
yeah, yeah.
hasn't quite made the cut quite yet. But yeah, no, solid, absolutely great distillery. What do you think about it being 14? Any
I
thoughts?
I
Is
mean, yeah, it's
feels
just
about right? I don't know.
right. I'm happy it's up there. I think it's relatively deserving of that.
Mhm.
I'm sure that there are, especially for if you're just want a good, solid,
Yeah,
tasty, like 13-year-old introductory, affordable, available. Yes, they deserve to be 14. If that's what you're rating it on, absolutely. If you can swing the 17 and the 23, it sounds like I really enjoyed the 17. Still getting to know the
17
23,
is
but some
exceptional.
people, the 23 is one of their top whiskeys ever. So
Hmm.
I think the independent bottling range is more, hey, you're kind of rolling the dice a little bit, which is
Hmm.
kind of weird. That's like the opposite of what we've been saying, where the official range is maybe a little bit more consistent.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm happy to see it up here. I think it's a distillery that does things right. I love Worm Tub Distilleries,
Yep.
and the 13-year-old is a could definitely be a kind of a regular presence on my shelf if I did that sort of thing. But
Yeah. And this is the one that rose 6 spots,
yeah,
uh, which is pretty crazy. I'm not sure what to attribute that to, but I'm happy to see it.
yeah, it might just be a slow emergence from the underrated category into
Yeah,
the, hey, this 13 years old, you're getting, and it's priced around some of the other 10, 12 years old, so you're getting just that little
get a
extra
little
bump.
extra. Yeah.
And it's kind of a good, I think it's a mix of bourbon and a little bit of sherry casks, so it's a nice balance there, and, yeah, I think the only thing I can attribute it to is that it's people are discovering it,
Hmm.
and it's kinda coming out of that underrated category,
Yeah,
and well,
yeah.
good
Ready
timing
to
because
go.
I'm out of whiskey, and I do have a glass port of our next one. What
Yeah.
do you are you surprised by Craig Ellickey's rating? I guess I don't wanna completely ignore you.
It is maybe a touch higher than I would have guessed.
Hmm.
I would have guessed maybe 17 to 20. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's close. I'm not surprised. Yeah, maybe like pre 6 point bump. That's kind of where I'd expected it to be.
Hmm.
So I'm pleasantly surprised. It means it jumped. Glenallachie, Loch Lomond, Clynelish. I'm kind of sad it jumped Edgedour, but sample
Yeah,
size permitting, it makes
yeah,
sense. So
yeah.
yeah, no, uh, I'm fine with it. It makes sense.
I'm almost tempted to, like, applaud it more loudly because it's a Dewar's distillery, and it's like, yes, you keep
Yeah,
giving us
yeah,
all these big blenders, like, keep giving us good
and
whiskey, and
it, the
you'll
whole
get some recognition
and the
for it.
whole range, as far as I know, is
Mhm.
enthusiast
Yeah.
forward.
Yep.
I don't think there's any coloring to be found anywhere or anything like that.
I
So,
don't think so, yeah.
um, yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, glad to see that. So let's hit Pete Rowe here.
Yeah, we're getting into, to Smoky Town here. Number 13 is a one of the old new distilleries, right? This started up in the early 2000s,
Hmm?
Kilchoman. And this is
2005.
one that I think we've both jumped on and began to appreciate a little bit more in the
Mm,
last year and a half. This is I was saying before, I realized I just completely ignored your opinion on Craig Ellicky there at the end, but,
no, no,
uh,
it's fine.
I had just I needed a glass of whiskey, um, so it was good timing because I had one of these poured. This is actually, a single barrel selection that a friend of mine, apparently he had a big enough group of whiskey friends down in New Orleans or something like that in the Southeast US,
Mhm.
where they selected their own barrel,
Oh,
and,
nice.
this is 100% Isla Oloroso sherry single cask, filled September 2012, bottled, a day over, September 2021. So it's 9 years old in a day, and yeah, it is coming in at a healthy 56.2%. There we go. And yeah, Kilhoman, I think, is in terms of kind of the smoky Islas, I've really started to enjoy them because they provide, at least the ones that I really like, it's a dirtier, sootier
Yeah.
kind of smoke. And some of them, like, it varies. It depends on what you're drinking. And in the US, we get Impacts. We mentioned them earlier. They import a lot of single casks, that unique cask types and that sort of thing. But when you get the super sooty, almost asphalty smokiness, I don't know. There's something about that in these Kilhomans
Mhm.
that I really enjoy.
Yeah, no, so I'm a relatively recent convert to Kilhoman. I've got 3 bottles now, all acquired, I think, within the last 12 months, maybe a little longer. And you actually turned me on to it.
I think it was
Uh,
this bottle. I think it was this one.
Very well might have been. So, uh, to kind of, I guess, tell that story quickly. So between me and you, we kind of have this sort of legendary bottle between us. Not necessarily for how amazingly epic it is, but we have our
Yeah.
Balakin 11-year Manzanilla cask,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's just this. It's like the most industrial. It's by
Chewing on
all by by
chewing on
all
oily rags, yeah.
by all flavor definitions, it's gross.
Yeah, it
But
should
but
be Completely disgusting. Yeah.
But for some reason, it is still really good. But it's just
It grew
it's
on
sort
us
of
for sure. Yeah.
famous for us with kind of like this industrial, gross, oiliness.
Yeah.
And when you sent me a kill, I was kind of staying away from Kilhoman because not I guess for any specific reason, but I was already into my Ardbegs and Lafroigs, and I kind of had my peat home, and Kilhoman was this new, young distillery. Um, I just really wasn't thinking about it too hard, and then you sent me it must have been that one, and it had that same industrial, farmy grossness to
Yeah.
it Balakin had. I'm like, oh, this is the Balakin. This is the Balakin. And it was tasting so good. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is maybe better, the best I've ever had this Balakin. I was so sure that it was it.
Yeah.
Um, and when you revealed to me that not only was it not the Balakin, but it was like a 7-year-old, you know,
9. Yeah.
this, however old it was, yeah, less than 10 years old, new distillery that I've never tasted. I immediately ran out and bought 2 bottles. Uh, not of that exact one, but I got a
Yeah.
7-year PX cask, and then they had the Loch Gorm for that year as well for the previous year. And then I've since got a 12-year single cask, which until at least as far as we know, the recent infamous 16-year-old was one of their higher age statements that they'd put out. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, it's got this weird industrial farmy notes that differentiates itself from the Ardbeg, you know, tar notes, and then like the Lafroig Band-Aid, like it's got its own distinct
Mhm.
character,
Yeah.
which um, is awesome, and I enjoy it. Uh, Still not quite as experienced maybe with it as some of the other Isla distilleries, but it's earned my respect in the last 12 months for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely a distillery that I could probably spend a lot more time exploring, especially since we do get a ton of uh these single barrels that have been imported
Yeah.
via or brought in via Impacts, and they're Kilhoman branded, and it says Impact Selection or something
Hmm.
on the box. But
Yeah.
basically, every kind of cast type you can possibly
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
is
Benny,
available.
Benny's has 10 different Kilhoman bottlings at any given
Yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they're all essentially most of them are single year age stated. They're not
Yeah.
super cheap. They're okay, or they're not
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, in terms of
Some of
US
them are
dollars,
okay.
they're still probably approaching 90 to $100 for even like the younger age statements. Maybe like if it's the 46% releases, they might be a little bit less, but usually, especially for young Pete, I'm looking at cask strength stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, not unreasonable given today's trends, but yeah, they can be pricey.
But it feels like this distillery is I think we kind of figured this out somewhat independently, but
Mhm.
it feels like a lot of the other community has kind of figured it out as well. Seemed like
Yeah.
there was always like the Kilhoman fanboys, and they were talking about it all the time. But then it's the Snag, I think has gotten some really good reviews. I think Ralphie's like talked about it.
Yeah.
And a lot Gorm is a lot of people's favorites. I know you're a big fan of the one that you got, which is
Mhm.
it's more of an annual release from them.
Yeah.
And
To my
then
knowledge.
even their Macker Bay, they have a cast strength version and a 46% version.
Yeah. Mhm.
If you like, it's more of a bourbon cask sort of vibe to it. And they do an Isla barley version. I mean, they do all sorts of stuff. And so if you like peated whiskey, you can probably find something that's going to fit your profile if you're willing to kind of
Yeah.
play around. But there are some
Yeah.
gross notes.
And I was actually gonna say, like, before too long, it's definitely gonna have its own sort of role to play in that Isla Pete sort of balance. But
Yeah,
based on its ranking, it already does.
yeah,
It's right behind Lafroig and Ardbeg, and it's ahead of Lagavulin.
and it's
Um,
coming for them too. I think it's
yeah,
I
Yeah,
wouldn't be
so it's
surprised if it leapfrogs them over the next
yeah,
couple,
and,
updates that they do here.
it might be time to say that we've got it. Kilhoman's here, and it's bringing it.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, especially, Ardbeg, I think is this is my opinion. I mean, Ardbeg is super smoky. Lefroy is a little bit more challenging because of the medicinal iodine Band-Aid,
Mhm.
and Kilhoman is, I think, it's more industrial.
Yeah.
Where Ardbeg is a little bit more approachable with like their smoked meats, a little bit ashy campfire. It's not as like weird or like intimidating for someone coming into peat. I just did a Ardbeg 10 review, and I think I kind of basically said that I think if you once you like peat, the Lefroy and the Kilhomans of the world become really appealing, and I can see that the Kilhoman is doing good things now. They released that 16-year-old. It hit the states. I'm not sure what the UK price was. It hit the states at $280 plus tax, so basically $300 for a 16-year-old.
I think it was 200 pounds.
It sound yeah. I want which
From the headlines, from what I recall, it was 200 pounds.
Yeah, it was at least 200, if not maybe a little bit more. But yeah, so it's $300 here, after tax, and basically it sold out. It sold out immediately. Like it
Mm,
was gone.
yep.
And when it hit the States, it hit K&L. I never even saw it in stock. It was just
Mhm.
I wasn't gonna buy one. That was one I was like, nope, not doing that. I mean, of course, I want one, but $300, no, forget it. 16 years old, no, not
Yeah.
doing it. I have limits to how stupid I'm willing to be. But it's which is unfortunate, but again, I think this is another distillery that we were kind of waiting, similar to Bruichladdich, for aged whiskey. They've been open, they've been distilling a long time. Like you said, we had a 12-year-old single cask that seemed to be, as far as we knew, was one of the oldest whiskeys they had released. And they
Mhm.
come out with this 16 at an exorbitant price. And it's likely they just don't have a lot of whiskey at this age. And they finally got to a point where they could do some,
Mhm.
and they knew it was going to be on the auctions and everything. So they decided to get their money, which I'll never begrudge someone. That's
Yeah,
when
I
when you first release something and we don't have a lot of it. This is going to be on the auction house next month
yeah. Well,
in the dozens. Let's get paid. And it's like, you
you
know
know,
what? Go ahead.
as crappy as it feels, if a business sells something high and it sells out immediately, then they
Yeah,
deserve to. That's fine.
yeah.
It's when you're selling things high and it's sitting on the shelf for for years and you refuse to change.
Or if it's
Um,
artificial scarcity and you're just kinda you wanna sell it for a lot so you don't release much. I don't think that's what Kilhoman's doing. I honestly
yeah,
believe
no, especially with how many different things they kind of pump out.
yeah.
I'm shocked, especially with how they're relatively small, to my
Yeah, let me look.
understanding.
Let me double
Like,
check, but they're pretty small. Yeah,
I know they're not huge.
they're considered a farm. I opened right to the page.
Uh-huh.
650,000 liters. So,
Okay,
yeah,
so yeah, not tiny, but
not tiny, but they're
uh,
alright.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially they've got like 5 regular releases at least, and then like that with between, and then they have like cask strength
Mhm.
versions and stuff. So, um, yeah, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised if they don't have very much old stock.
Yeah, especially I think they were one of the first new distilleries to really start releasing whiskey. In fact, when I the time I was in Scotland, which was 2010, something like that. Anyway,
Mm,
2010, 2012, somewhere in there, they had begun releasing whiskey and,
mhm,
talking. I wasn't a whiskey geek at that time. I barely knew whiskey, but I met my coworker. I was in Northern England and he was in Edinburgh, and we met in Glasgow for a weekend to hang
yeah.
out. We had a free weekend, and
If only you knew
um,
where you were.
yeah,
If only.
yeah, if only. um, I know, and that's it's weird thinking back about it. I had a great time, a lot of fun, like, stories, but I ended up bringing home a bottle of Mackier Bay,
Yep.
because I was everyone was like, "Try this new whiskey that just came out." Everyone was like, "Try this new whiskey that came out." I was like, "Okay, I don't know anything about whiskey. I don't even like think I
I
really like whiskey." But
I still have that empty bottle in the other
yeah.
room.
So, I mean, this would have been a couple years maybe after they first released Mackier Bay, and, it was, like, kind of hard to get one. It was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, yeah, if you want a bottle, you can check this store or that store," and, so we walked around, and eventually I found one and brought one home, and no id like, that bottle's probably worth money now, but,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
we made it through, drank it, but, um, I don't have much memory of it because I was mostly drinking it when I didn't know what I was doing or what it was or
Yeah.
anything like that. But anyways, it's fun, and I think there was a lot of excitement around that distillery even in Scotland. Just, "We got a new distillery," sort of thing, and it was a cool
In
and
Isla,
then
it wasn't the first new Isla distillery in
oh,
a
yeah,
long time,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I'm pretty sure. I mean, obviously, like, Bruichladdich was kind of in its revival at that point, but,
Mhm.
it hadn't released they probably hadn't released much in the way of new spirit. They started
Yeah.
redistilling in 2001, so if this maybe 10 years later, maybe they had started to release, like, the classic laddies and stuff like that,
Mhm.
um, but even that was a distillery that had been around for a long, 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 long time and just said shut
Yeah,
down for a few years.
mothballed a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so Kilhoman's exciting. I think I'm crossing my fingers that things settle in terms of pricing and they can kind of catch up on some of this demand. Um, Now, hopefully, they can release things at maybe a more accessible price point and a little bit greater quantity as time goes on. But at the end of the day, you're right. Like, it's disappointing, but I'm also not going to be mad because yeah, would have been on the auction house in a week. So
Yeah. At the very least, Kilhoman being that heavily peated, you know, it may just work better at younger ages anyway. It's really not
yeah,
a
actually, I haven't heard
distillery.
if it's good or not.
It's not really a distillery. I'm like, at least at this point in my journey, yearning for old, elegant Kilhoman. I'm still pretty
Yeah,
happy with the weird,
yeah,
funky industrial stuff. So,
yeah.
um,
It'll be interesting. Have you seen any reviews of the new 16? I
I
haven't.
think I read one or two when it was first dropped. Um, they seemed relatively positive, but again, it really
Mm,
wasn't glowing or hating on it.
yeah, I
Not
think
in
it
the
was
direct.
more. I didn't want to risk somebody writing an article saying that this is the best whiskey they've ever had, and like put even a crack in my willing my armor of not
I
being that dumb to go buy a three
don't
hundred
rec- I
dollar.
don't recall reading that. I think we're okay for now.
Yeah, right. But still excited about Kilhoman. Even their younger stuff is good. You're right. It'll be interesting to try it at an older age to see how that industrial quality kind of whether it
Evolve.
fades, whether it sticks around, how it
Yeah.
how it kind of melds in with time. But as you mentioned, that is right on the heels of two
It's
uh
neighbors.
just legendary Isla distillery. So the fact that it is nipping at the heels of Lafroig, which is a number 12, and then Ardbeg at number coming in at number 11. We'll stick
Yeah.
with Lafroig right now, but is impressive. And because Lafroig is still doing pretty good work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really hard to complain about anything Lafroig is doing. They're kind of chugging along, doing. They've got their 10, which is 43%, but
In the US, 40
in
in the
the
UK.
US, yep. So kind of their introductory bottle, but after everything beyond that, I believe is 46 and up.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, and
you
I
were
almost don't even blame them for the 40%, 43% on the 10 because it's a strong
strong flavor.
flavor, and it's a interesting flavor that most people aren't gonna be used to, and even most people at the 40 or 43%, they smell it and taste it once and are like,
Yeah,
"No, no thanks."
yeah. Either they're cringing at it or they found the new love. But no, yeah, me and you were both kind of talking a little bit ago. It's like we've both consumed a lot of Lafroig. Um, I think I've finished off probably 4 or 5 bottles, and I still have a few more on the shelf. Um,
Yeah.
and I think you've surprisingly gone through it, even though I'm more of a peat head than you are. You seem to have gone through your own fair share.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about it before, getting ready to do this, and I'm like, okay, which Lafroigs did I like the most? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not sure I've even had a bottle of the regular 10-year-old.
Hmm.
It's one of those ones that maybe I just never bought because I've had the quarter cask. I've had at least one version of the 10 cask strength, both of those were fantastic. I've had almost every Carchus release since I got into
Hmm.
whiskey the last 3 or 4. I've had I have a bottle of the sherry cat, the 10-year-old sherry version is open right now. I have last year's Carchus open right now.
Hmm.
And it's like in terms of and these have all been official bottlings on top of it, right? These are all
Yep.
Lafroigs. I don't think I've
Oh yeah.
ever owned a Lafroig independent bottling. They're fairly available, but I never had
I
to because my shelf is full
don't
of
think I
bourbon.
have either. I think I've also only got official releases of Lafroig. 'Cause we both. I've drank through a bottle of the 16. You have one.
Yeah.
I'm on my second bottle.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I love the PX Cartridge from a few years ago. That was an incredibly good bottle. But yeah, 10 cask strengths, like everything they put out. Again, if you like, it is challenging. It's definitely a medicinal band-aidy, almost kind of a texture,
Yeah,
peatiness.
you get used to it, and I don't even get the Band-Aids on it really that
Yeah,
much anymore.
I've got to think about it to really kind of notice that.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, Lafroig. It's solidly un relatively uncontroversial. you know,
yeah.
um, which is a rarity almost among peated distilleries.
You either love
Uh,
it or you hate it, and then,
that
like,
it's just
nobody.
kind of yeah, it's just chugging along doing its thing, and its thing it just happens to be really, really, really good. Um,
Yeah.
I'm almost disappointed it's down at 12. I would have liked to see it hit the top 10. Although having said that, I think it might actually be at like my 11 or 12 as well. So
Yeah.
um, it's it's uh it's definitely a love of mine. It's good.
Did you have one of the older releases of Lafroig, like a 20 plus?
Yes, well, I have an official release. I have a 25. Yeah, but it was an
Okay.
official release.
How do you feel that one has matured with the age? Do you think it's still Lafroig, or do you feel like it has
Ah,
tamed down enough?
ooh, yeah. No, it's still pretty Lafroig. It's definitely identifiable if you kind of know what you're drinking. It's definitely mellowed.
Mm,
But it is still it's still high proof. Like I think it's still in the 50s, if I remember correctly. Um, so the flavor is still relatively intense. It's maybe less, even less so like medicinal or band-aidy. Um, but there's still a nice, elegant smoke to it. Um, it's it's
hmm. Well,
it's yeah. Again, like if I want a peated whiskey, I'm not necessarily certain I'm thinking of that bottle. Like that bottle's
mm,
almost kind of in a different
mm,
category,
right,
which
I got you.
which is why I really wasn't even thinking of it when I was thinking of my Lafroigs,
Yeah.
because it's kind of almost
Well,
its own thing in terms of
well,
an experience.
and the reason I kinda brought it up was, like, Lafroig is, at least when we're talking about US here, it's a little weird because
Mm,
the regular 10-year-old is pretty fairly priced. It's right in there with Ardbeg 10. Now it's a few percentage points lower, but it's still Lafroig. If you like Lafroig, it's probably good. You also have option for the 10 cast strength, which is a little pricey. It's like $90 or something here. For But it's good. The quarter cask, I think, is in the middle there. And then as obviously as the age statements go up, once you hit that 20-year-old, the prices they go up quite a bit. We've
mhm.
started getting the Lafroig branded single casks, which are 9 years old and $250, which is
Yes.
just infuriating.
which
Um,
you'd have out of your mind to buy one.
yeah, yeah, and it wasn't very good. Right? Yeah, you did get
Uh,
one.
it
You sent
is,
it to me, and I wasn't a huge fan of it.
it's
It's not
aggressive.
okay.
Like you've got to want
Hmm.
aggressive or play with the water some.
Was that the
Um,
PX cask, or did you get a different one? Because I know
no,
they
it's yeah, no, it's an I believe it's a 9-year-old PX cask. Yeah,
yeah, you sent it to me in blind, and I don't remember exactly what I thought about it, but I think
but
it lost, but
it's like 63.3 or something
yeah.
like that ABV. Um,
But it's just and that's fine, all of that's fine,
yeah, no,
but for
it's aggressive.
$215 a
Yeah.
bottle, it's like it's half you're almost halfway to, like, the 21 or 25-year-old, I'm not
Well,
even sure what you
I bought one of those too, so I
I
covered both ends
yeah,
of the
I know,
spectrum.
but anyway, you can get the Carchus bottles are typically 90-ish dollars plus or minus 10 bucks,
Yeah,
80 to 100 bucks.
those are really good value.
They're very good value.
I
I'm not
recommend the
quite
cart.
cast strength, but, you're getting they do a good job of at least
I will
giving you
say
some interesting
last year's
cast.
cartridge, the port wine or whatever, wasn't my favorite.
Oh, the
I
Madeira and, white port.
yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah.
maybe more middling on my, like, Carchus list, but no, it's still good.
Yeah, I liked it enough to buy a bottle, and again, it's not
Mm,
a massive investment. You can get one, and if this is what I would like to see from Scotch distilleries, like release special releases where, yeah, you can do different. It's like what Ardbeg does, the opposite of what Ardbeg does, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Where you do a special release and you do something interesting, you do some different cask types, that sort of thing. But I don't have to feel bad if it's not my favorite because it's fairly priced. I don't have to step over, the
yeah,
corpses of my loved ones to get one. It's like they're still like I can still buy the warehouse one, which was maybe one it was a bourbon cask, which is probably why people like ignored it because it was basically just another 10 cask strength. But
I can see that, yeah.
but yeah, you can buy a bottle and explore it and you're gonna have an opinion about it and you don't have to be angry if it's not like your
Oh,
favorite bottle.
absolutely,
Where
absolutely.
Ardbeg, it's almost like, "Oh, this was non-age stated $185, and it tastes
If you're
exactly
lucky.
like the 10 it's worse than the 10-year-old that I can get for 55, and now I'm
Mm.
mad." But
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
talk about
we'll
you
get to
wanna
that
wrap up Lefroy before we go on the
very
Ardbeg
shortly.
rant?
Um, yeah, no, like, again, I can't recommend it enough if
Mhm,
that's a profile you're curious about. It's
yeah,
hard to go wrong. Um, I've covered the gamut from, young to old and everything in
yeah,
between, and it's hard to be disappointed for sure, in my opinion.
I agree, it's especially if you're focusing on their stuff that is not 20 plus years old, and you're, again, staying away from some of these ridiculous single casts. Now, part of
Yeah.
that is probably I don't know if Lefroy is charging that, but some of it's like getting a single cask over to the US. I don't know. I have no idea why they're charging so much. But the 10-year-old, the 10 cask strength, the quarter cask, the 10 sherry cask, the Carchus, like these are all good.
Right. Very
But
good.
if you can do the Lefroy profile, like there I have 0 complaints. And the
Mhm.
Carchus, I think, is actually one of the better examples of a
Yeah.
special release that is like low pressure. The cost is the price is fair. And if you don't love it, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So there's always next year.
Exactly. Right.
But
As
a
opposed to
a little bit of an opposition to that, another legendary island
boy,
distillery.
here
But
we
this
go.
other distillery that probably, in addition to Clynelish and Ben Nevis, if they wanted to, they could just be the belle of the ball. They could be the shining star. And then clearly still a lot of people,
Yeah,
they are. They are still that.
yeah, and
However,
I was almost going to make that similar argument. Is like I don't think they're that far away.
Yeah. I
Given
think I
even
have the
given
whiskey
some of
bottle here.
our misgivings. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. You spent a good chunk of the beginning of your
Yes.
Scotch whiskey journey as a Ardbeg fan,
Yes.
fanatic,
I was
diehard, however you wanna put
I
it,
was
cult of Ardbeg,
unofficially diehard cult of Ardbeg. Yep.
and so you've stepped away from that degree of passion, but I'll let you just kinda talk us through your journey and your
Yeah.
opinion of what Ardbeg is now, because you probably know out of the both of us, like
Yeah. So I mean, my love of Ardbeg again, as most of my Scotch journey is initially attributed to. I can thank you for it. I remember uh, one of our, I think it was maybe our New Year's party, or one of the parties you were in town and you come and hung out, and you brought an Ardbeg 10, and it was in that nice t- Ardbeg with the
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 warehouse.
warehouse one. It's got says Ardbeg on the side, and it's got the nice fancy box.
Yeah,
Um, and we popped it open, and some people refuse to drink it because of what it smelled like. Because
yeah,
most of my friends are not Scotch heads or peated heads at all.
yeah.
But I had already started with Lagavulin, and I picked up Lagavulin eights, and I don't remember if I had found a 16 or not by then. But yeah, Ardbeg, just that different style, the density, uh, it just knocked my socks off, and I instantly fell in love. And like Ardbeg was my first. This is what I'm here for.
Right.
This is what I'm buying. This is what I'm into. Uh, Enjoyed the rest of that 10. Bought another one. Ugadal. I went and got every core range bottle I could find. Went and
Mm.
got Corey of Reckon. Went and got Ugadal. Um,
NO?
Went and got an NO. Uh, and then I never actually did. Shortly after that was the first release of the Wee Beastie. I never, I don't believe, no, I never picked up a bottle of the Wee Beastie.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think. I actually don't
Yeah,
recall.
I
It
don't
doesn't,
remember.
it doesn't really
I
matter.
I got one, yeah.
Um,
I remember I picked one up.
but but yeah, so the Ardbeg 10 hooked me in, and the Ugadal knocked me over, and from that moment on, it was the density, the meatiness, the ashiness, the everything, just everything about. I loved every single thing about it, and I got into it right sort of on the tail end of the Ardbeg committee releases being okay. Like the maybe one or two I kind of caught where they were still reasonable releases.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of which, I have one of the first ones here, which I think I got through you. But this is not the committee release, but this is an Ardbeg Black,
Yeah, it's the
40,
standard issue.
46%. That's gonna be my last dram of the night here. Almost gone, although I can't show you that because the bottle's black. Um, but but yeah, no, I was on the train for every single committee release. I was hooked. I was an addict, and then I bought the next four or five, and some of those started to be in that ridiculous territory. The Ardcore, Fermutation. Um, yep, there's the Fermutation right there.
The
My
last committee release I ever bought.
my absolute favorite was the Ardbeg, the pirate one
Ardbeg.
that was dedicated to. I'm blanking on his name, but the old distillery manager. That one was awesome. I believe it was in rum barrels, which is I think the only rum finished whiskey I've ever uh exclusively or maybe mostly rum finished whiskey that like holy shit, this is really good.
Mhm.
um uh, but no, anyways, but yeah, no, like the first few were really 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 good, and again
Yeah.
kept that love, that spark alive.
Yeah, you
But then the
were
last good.
sorry, yeah, like,
But
'cause
yeah, I was gonna say that just like the last two or three, like the Ardcore and the Fermutation, like the Fermutation was weird enough. I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. Um, Again, maybe I don't love to drink it as necessarily as much, but I get that it's weird and it's not my favorite. And kind of with the Lafroig thing, like that's okay if it's maybe not my favorite. But like the Ardcore was like I forget what their gimmick. It was like a spiky. It's like
Chocolate
biting
malt.
into
That
us.
was
Like,
chocolate malt, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Similar to
Um,
the Glenmorangie Signet.
yes, but I'm like, yeah, like this is kind of, I don't know. The magic kind of faded away after, and then
Yeah.
I think I bought again another two or three, and I'm just like, these prices. This is the hassle. Like it's just, and now I think I can find the last three or four
Yep.
sitting on the shelf still at Benny's.
Well,
Um,
it used to be I used to get almost all of your committee releases in Denver.
mhm,
I
yeah.
I would I would always see them on the shelf, and I got you probably most of them through
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah,
period of
you did get,
running.
I think, all of them except I special ordered a Dark Cove
Yeah,
overseas,
but
by myself because I'd heard their reputation. I needed one bad, so I
but yeah,
paid
you're right,
reasonably for it.
they're definitely don't they hang around at least,
Yeah,
I think the b because they've recently done the Bazaar-BQ, which got pretty good feedback. I still haven't had it. They have their smoke trails, which is, I guess, a bit of a travel retail thing, although I
yeah,
have seen
that's
it
what
for
I've heard.
sale on certain websites.
Oh, yeah?
They just
Interesting.
released their 2nd version,
Mm,
which and again, those are good. I've heard decent things about that, like, but yeah, they're heavy vapors, which they
mhm,
remove the purifiers from their stills or something. Didn't like the last committee release I bought was the fermutation.
yeah,
Again, so 13-year-old age statement, longest fermentation. Some I can't remember the exact story, but they had the something else broke, so they just had their
yeah,
whiskey kind of fermenting for a long time while they fixed this other thing. And is it does it taste good? Yeah. Yeah, it tastes
mhm,
good. It's not like it's bad, but you drink this next to the Ardbeg 10. This is, which was which is a quarter of what this costs.
mhm,
This was $200 plus here when I hit the States.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, this is different, but there's nothing here that says, yes, 4 times the price.
mhm,
It's and it's not a super high proof, it's 49.4%, 13 years old, so it's definitely not cask strength. Um, Non-chill filter, natural color, super expensive, and that was when I tapped out. I was like, "I'm not doing it anymore."
yeah,
I'd rather wait for one to be epic and have to
mhm,
get one on auction or something. I'd rather
secondary,
pay
yeah,
that extra than keep stabbing in the dark at these things. And it
yeah,
feels like either A, people have stepped back from buying these or they've upped the amount that they're producing because it is sitting on the shelf.
yeah, absolutely. Um, and Ardbeg for me, again, I'll always love, especially the core range. The core range, again, is still
Mhm.
really solid. Um,
I named it the
Besides the
10
10,
underrated.
I I've heard, again, I haven't actually bought any in a while, but I heard like besides the 10, the core range is a little overpriced. Like I think
It
the Ugadal's over 100, is like at least around
so
100 now.
a few years ago, you could get the Ugadal in California for
Mhm,
65, $70.
mhm,
Because I moved to Denver, and for some reason, peated whiskey in Colorado costs like 45% more than anywhere else. I don't know why. Something to do with the distribution network.
mhm,
Somebody's screwing around. But so I ordered two. I had 2 bottles shipped from California of Ugadal back in like 2020, 2021,
mhm,
and opened one, drank it. I still got the other one, haven't opened it yet because it's even in California now, it's up around like 95. But in
mhm,
the core of Reckon is 110, 115, and in a lot of places the Ugadal is over $100 as well. And
yeah,
it's it's not okay. It's another one of these things that it's not as good as it used to be, quote unquote. Probably has younger whiskey in it. They're not putting 20-year-old whiskey in it anymore.
exactly.
It's still supposed to be pretty damn good. But yeah, at $100, it starts that's why I haven't opened my 2nd bottle because it's almost like another one of these things where, like, I don't wanna pay to replace it.
Mhm,
So, like, I don't wanna just open it for no reason, especially since I have a backlog of Isla whiskeys anyways.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I have a 16 that I got a couple of years ago of Lafroig that
Mhm.
is yeah, it's still it's still there, even though I know I like it because I've had yours. I'm like, this is pretty good. Uh, but yeah, it's
But yeah,
Ardbeg's been a
and
weird
then the
choice for me.
rest and then the rest of the lineup again, other than those like 4 like core range bottles, and then those are which are again reasonable to maybe a bit on the higher side. Then you've got the ridiculous,
Yeah,
weird marketing of the committee releases, which okay, fine. And then they finally released a new 25-year-old a couple of years ago, and it's $1,000 for 46% whiskey. It's like,
yeah,
come on, like Ardbeg.
yeah.
I just want to stop, just stop.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that 25 was ranging from I think you maybe could find it for 900 up to, like, 1250 or something like that, and it was just damn, like, 'cause
yeah,
Glen Scotia released a 25-year-old a couple years late like, almost around the same time frame, and that was,
mhm,
like, 400, and, like,
yeah,
that was getting all sorts of awards. I never bought one because
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
tough it's tough to just
Like
I wanted one,
nowadays, especially in the states, a 25-year-old whiskey is probably in that $400 to $500 range,
it's
on average, I would
starting
guess.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
probably starting.
um,
Highland Parks and Lafroigs are a little bit
yeah,
more
like the fashionable distilleries and stuff, they're gonna be a bit high, and then like Ardbeg just it's so hard to be committed to that distillery when there's so much choice now, and it's
mhm. We just talked about Kilhoman, right? I mean,
yeah, like Kilhoman's blowing my socks off, and um,
Ardbeg's maybe a little more approachable, but and look, I just reviewed the Ardbeg 10. I gave it a 7. Did I give it a 7? There's so many whiskey reviews now, I
I
give them
think
a
you
10.
said you'd personally give it a 6, but you bumped it
Yes,
up a little
you're
bit.
right.
Yep.
You're right, yeah. Personally, just from my personal profile, I would give it a 6, but, like, out
The
of the like, this is a really it's
the
still a really
quality
good
is undeniable. Yeah.
yeah, it's and I really enjoy drinking the Ardbeg 10. It's still fairly priced,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, they're doing this, and the
Yeah.
Ugadal people still love, no question about it. It's a little tough to justify the price for me.
Mhm.
It's been a while since I've even tasted an Ugadal, so maybe I'm a little out of pocket, but, uh,
Mhm.
it's another distillery, like I said, if they wanted to be top 5
Yeah, they could.
in this poll, they could be if they wanted to be. They make
They
the
could.
whiskey that could do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
but they don't release that. They're more focused on selling 1970s barrels for $19 billion or whatever the heck they're selling
Mhm.
those things for now.
Yeah.
Or like I've seen like 9-year-old single barrels, cask strength, Ardbeg branded sell out in an hour for 500 pounds a bottle or something. It's just people are still buying it, and again, we've talked about this. You can't blame them for selling whiskey at a price that still sells out.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked about this too much, but also the idea that if it doesn't sell out immediately, that it's a failure is wrong because you don't say that about any other products. But we just
Yeah.
got into this mindset of like, no, they finally are creating enough to maintain shelf space in a store. So when you
Mhm.
walk by, you actually see Ardbegs
Yeah.
and or whatever brand it is.
Yeah, no one's criticizing Kleenex because there's Kleenex on the shelf,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And with all the competition, with all these competitors coming up out of nowhere,
Yeah.
um, like maintaining a spot on store shelves because you have stock that's not gone in an hour
Mhm.
can keep and they're selling it at a larger margin because yeah, it didn't cost that much to
Yeah.
make the whiskey. Like it encourages some stores to, "Oh, yeah, we'll keep them on the shelf, and maybe it'll take a little longer to sell, but it will sell eventually,
Yeah.
and
There's something to be said
we're
for
gonna make
shelf
a good
life.
margin on it."
Yeah, no, so like I say, we don't know the financials. We don't know if their strategy is working or not. I mean, clearly it's
Well,
working
they
some
haven't
way.
lowered the prices, right? So
They keep doing it.
they're not
So I
panicking.
haven't I haven't really paid attention to the last 2 or 3
That's
committees,
true.
but,
I couldn't tell you what the
um,
heavy vapors went for or anything like that. The Barbecue, which got good reviews, is not cheap.
no, no. Is Heavy
80, 90,
Vapors
100 bucks
actually
like
a
that.
committee release, or
No, no, the Barbecue
yeah,
is was just,
that was just
I
like a
don't know if it
normal.
I don't know if it's core range, but
Mm,
it was,
okay,
yeah, it wasn't a committee release. That was the
okay.
Heavy Vapors last year, the most
That
recent
one
one.
was. Okay. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, the last one I bought was the Hypernova, and, again, really good.
It was another pricey one, though.
Does it justify the price tag? No, not
Yeah,
really. Anyways, yeah, so a distillery that I still love down in my heart, but, in some senses I've kind of moved on.
but see,
So,
we're sitting here complaining about it, and we're repeating what a lot of other people have said, but it's still coming in at number 11,
yeah,
which means that, and this is what p again, people voted this in their top 10. That's the most 11th most voted into the top 10.
yeah,
So, obviously, there is still a lot of love for whether it's a 10-year-old, the Ugadal, or people do still love their committee releases or some of these newer, Barbecue and Smoke Trails and
yeah.
things that have come out.
Yeah, I mean, you've gotta probably think that it's the core range again, is because it's generally, again, quality is not an issue at all. It's,
Yeah.
um
I think out of any distillery, like, the my impression from the chatter, quote, unquote, online is that there was no way this would have came in at number 11.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That it makes a lot of sense to me that this is 11.
Okay. I mean, because you don't hear anything positive about Ardbeg other than, "Oh, the Ugadal is still good, and yeah, the 10 is still good." But other than that, it's vitriol. It's not even, like, kind of meh, "Oh, just ignore it." It's like people are angry.
Yeah,
So
but I would think that would be from the people, well, like, they can be angry about the or the committee releases while they're still buying the 10-year-old, right?
yeah, but I
Um,
mean, even then, remember they did the comic book thing, like, a couple years ago that
yeah,
was, like, a meme for a while, and that
yeah,
was their, like, fo the
and then
beef reducing and stuff.
they had the NFT thing with
NFT,
the buried cask or
they
whatever
buried
that
cat
was.
yeah, I mean, anyway, I
Yeah.
think the impression, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be number 11. I think the impression that I had gotten
Mhm.
over the last couple of years, what I had been hearing was like, "Yeah, the 10's good and the Ugadal is still good, but have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Have you," and it's just, so when I saw it at number 11 falling out of the top 10, I'm like, "Okay." And this is something that I've learned since starting this
Mhm.
channel, that what I thought people think isn't true because I've been in a bubble. There's
Yep.
so much broader of a whiskey community out there that you
Yeah.
find yourself in a certain corner of it, and the loudest voices aren't always the majority. In fact,
Yeah, no,
usually a lot of times they're the minority, and that's why they're loud. But
yeah, and,
um, so when I
especially,
saw it at number 11, I'm like, "Oh, that's crazy." But also, I guess it makes sense, but also, like, no one talks
like
nicely about Ardbeg ever. So
especially from, like, uh, sort of like a YouTube or really sort of any sort of like social outlet where headlines are
mhm.
click clickbait almost. Like, Ardbeg's like the easiest clickbait distiller, out there. You
Yeah.
can rage all you want, especially if you're like a traditionalist Scotch lover, and like, oh, they're not about the whiskey anymore. They're about, blah 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 and bells and whistles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but the vast majority of people, especially when people complain about the marketing, I honestly believe the vast majority of people don't care about the marketing.
Mhm.
Like,
No, I agree.
whatever.
The straight
Like,
up marketing.
I'm not mad that they're like, oh, this that they have the comic book or something like that. That's irrelevant to me, and I feel like it's probably irrelevant to most people.
It doesn't affect the
Um,
whiskey, yeah, it's
yeah,
just, well, it might
um,
increase the price of the whiskey because they're spending so much on stupid marketing, but
yeah, maybe. But again, even that's beyond people's purview. We're like they're not thinking about that really. It's like
Sure.
okay,
Yeah, you're right.
oh, they put out a comic book. Who cares? Um, People care about is the whiskey good, and I think that's at least unequivocally the answer is yes, it's good.
Yeah.
Now, is it as you know for the committee stuff? Is it as much better as you want it to be based on the price? I don't know, whatever. Um, and and the whiskey that most people are buying are the 10 and the Ugadal and the
I know.
Koivrekin,
Yeah, I
and
haven't
that's
had
what's
about
still.
what did you think about the NO?
It was definitely the quietest, I guess, of the four. Like it kind of went down the easiest.
Okay.
Um, so I
It's one of the
you
more
know
it's one of the more
I
affordable. It's almost cheaper
yeah,
than the
no,
10,
I
I think.
do think it was the cheapest of the named one. Like I think it was more expensive than the
Weed
10.
Bea It might be around Weed Beastie prices, which are
Yeah, very well
5, $10 cheaper.
could be. Um, yeah, no, it was kind of unremarkable, but only so in the sense that I was looking for blah, kind of a thing. It
Sure.
was it was
Yeah, it's
kind of a
hard
bit more
yeah, it's hard
tamed. It was
to
a bit more. It was a bit. It might be a good segue to if you're coming into it. Anno would probably bet better than maybe Corey Vrecken, which
mm,
is again a bit more of a punch in the mouth. So yeah, again, it was fine. Especially in my mode, I wasn't looking to go back to it once I finished it, but
mhm.
I actually think maybe now it might fare more favorably.
A little bit more nuance, you might appreciate
Yeah,
it a
yeah,
little bit.
it's more nuance. It's there's I think maybe more interesting things happening as opposed to just getting punched in the face. So,
Fair enough, fair enough.
but
Yeah, I think what's clear is that there are either people are lying or there's some very split decision or split opinions
mhm.
on Ardbeg, but I do agree that
Yeah,
so here's what I was gonna say. If
yeah,
if you look on paper, if
mhm,
you stick on paper and you just look at, like, if you were to remove the marketing BS and you just looked at their committee releases, right? You could art make the argument that Ardbeg is one of the more innovative distilleries in all of Scotland,
sure, yeah.
right?
Oh,
They're
I
experimenting with different barleys, different chocolate malts, different
yeah,
fermentation time,
I'm not even
different
sure that's arguable.
well,
Like maybe like Loch Lomond is kind of up there with them, but yeah.
but I think the issue that some people have is that, yes, they are putting out this we're doing these incredibly innovative things,
Mhm.
and then the result isn't
Yeah. Well,
the result is something different, but not nearly
well,
as
they're
interesting
they're kind
as
of
the
weaponizing their creativity to some degree,
that's a good
though,
yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
right?
Well, and you could say that, like, yes, you could make really weird scotch that nobody tastes and
Mhm.
that maybe a very small number of people would love. It would be weird to a lot of people. Maybe they could grow to love it over time. But generally speaking, like even the fermutation, if anything, this is like a more tame version of the 10, right? And
Sure.
it's quieter, it's softer, it's maybe a little not even sweeter, but it's just it go like I drank my glass just now. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, "Where's my
Mhm.
glass?" I'm like, "Oh, I drank it." It's like over there. It's just
Yeah.
not even
Mm.
noticeable. So like they do all these like cool, innovative things, but the results don't quite match up with like the "you won't believe what we did," you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
exactly.
and again, it doesn't mean the whiskey's
Yeah.
bad. It's just
No,
the
just
expectations don't necessarily meet the results, and
no, I completely agree. But just gotta put a final touch on that initial question. I think what's kind of holding it up to 11 is like that silent majority, right?
mhm,
Like the only people you hear about complaining from are the ones who are shouting on the internet that they hate it.
yeah,
90 or whatever percent, but it's a lot more than half are just kind of trucking along, watching content. They're not shouting and
yeah.
they're just buying the whiskey they like. And I think a lot of people like the Ardbeg 10 and the Ugadal. So
Well,
um
it's another whiskey that I named as, like, an underrated whiskey again, because you never hear anyone talk about the Ardbeg 10. Now, again, I've heard a couple people talk about it more recently.
taking
As
it
soon
for
as I
granted.
named it underrated, everybody started talking about it. So then I had to do my own review, and
Trendsetter.
yeah, it's a good whiskey. I love it. I mean, the Ardbeg 10 should be a staple on your shelf, provided you love peated whiskey at all. And it's a comforting, delicious thing. It's not the most aggressive
Yeah.
um Isla peated whiskey out there. But so I'm happy that it's still up there at 11. I kind of I kind of wish maybe again, it doesn't matter what it's rated in this poll because it's not obviously Ardbeg sales. I mean, they're owned by Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. They're
Mm,
owned by the definitive luxury brand you can
yeah.
possibly find, and they're still releasing 46% non-chill filtered natural
Yeah.
color alongside Glenmorangie, who a little bit more delicate, a little bit more straightforward, but is also still releasing pretty good whiskey.
Yeah.
So
It could be a lot worse.
it could be a lot worse. They
With
could
that brand
completely
specifically, that could be a lot worse. So,
um,
yeah, some good, some bad. But I'm not surprised it's this high. I
yeah,
still think that, like I said, there's like a silent majority of just people just kind of minding their own business and drinking the stuff they like. And I think
yeah.
Ardbeg's
I
pretty
mean,
popular.
I can be greedy and say I wish you would release good,
Yeah,
legitimately good whiskey, regardless of the age statement,
yeah.
at
Why can't you just be
relatively
Springbank?
reasonable pricing.
You just want
Yeah,
every distillery to be Springbank, and it'll be awesome. But
yeah, yeah.
it's
I
not.
mean, yeah, because every distillery could be Springbank if they wanted to be, but at least in terms of just releasing the best whiskey they could and keeping it at
Yeah,
a fair price, they could.
yeah.
But yeah, obviously that's not going to be the case. So these distillers, when they find out they can sell one cask of whiskey for however tens of millions of pounds, or breaking records all the time, which every time a distillery does that, my heart breaks a little bit because
An angel
well,
loses its wings.
yeah, yeah. Every time a cask sells for £1,000,000, an angel loses its wings. Yeah. Um, it's but at the end of the
No,
day, our base still makes good whiskey, so I
yeah,
can still see people who are like,
undeniable.
screw the noise. They still make good whiskey. They still sell at 46% or higher. It's non-chill filter, natural color, and a good chunk of their range is obtainable and affordable. So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. It's kind of there's the people
yeah,
that are mad, but at the end of the day, the rest of us kind of just keep going. Am I going to buy another committee release soon?
no.
No. Do I have any issue? Will I have any issue buying that 10-year-old? No. Will I buy another bottle of Ugadal? Nah, $100,
TBD.
$100
TBD.
is a lot, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, at this point, I've had that bottle for a few years now. I don't even know when it was actually put in a bottle because it might have been on that shelf for a while. So it might be a collector's item at this point, but
Is it the old branding or is
I
it
don't think
new?
I don't think so. But no, I'm pretty sure it's not.
I do
You
like
can
that you
see
have
it.
the
It's
I
that
do
one
like
right
that you have the three last distilleries right there. Yeah,
there.
you
Oh
got
yeah,
Ardbeg, Kilhoman, and
look
Liverpool.
at that. Totally unintentional. Yeah, almost an order too. But yeah,
Almost.
that's one of the Isla Barley releases that it was an older
Okay.
version that I just randomly bought it in Wyoming one time, and there's that 16 we were talking about. But
Mm, mhm. There's
anyway,
there's my Dark Cove.
yeah, so
And there's my Lafroig
we
25.
oh yeah, there you go.
And then there's the Trayvon 19, the first batch. Anyways, yeah.
Wow, yeah, a lot of good ones back there. Those
Mhm.
are all empties.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, or at least if it's a box, the bottle's
Wow,
not in the
I
box.
gotcha.
So,
Okay.
um,
Well, we are. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I was hoping maybe, oh, this will be shorter. Every time, oh, this will be shorter. We're at 2.5 hours about roundabout. Some of it is us BSing or coughing into our shirts or something, but not too many cuts here, I don't think. Maybe we should probably get this one wrapped up.
yeah.
And
Like I said before we started, these are the distilleries we're actually passionate about. So
yeah, we're getting
um,
there. We're getting passionate, and it's not
this
going to
isn't my
stop. We're
story.
doing top 10 next week,
Yep.
which a lot of interesting conversations, a lot of good, really good distilleries up there, and just kind of just I think the conversation will mostly be focusing on what are they doing
A lot of
right.
good distilleries and one terrible one.
One
Tune in
terrible
next week
one.
to find
Yeah,
out.
yeah, one that makes absolute trash that everyone is, I don't know, they're paying off everybody apparently,
Tune
but
in next week to find out which
next week to
distillery.
find out, yeah. Which top 10 distillery is absolute garbage. Tune in next week. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but yeah,
Uh,
this was an interesting conversation because you're right. These are distilleries that you and I have, for the most part, come to know, or like we probably recognize we need to probably give a little bit more attention.
yep.
But there is only so much that your liver can handle and your wallet can
Mm,
handle and all that stuff. So, um, got to cut
mm.
that, cut out
Only
some
so
time.
much my shelves can handle.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, that's how, where I'm at now. Like I'm pretty much just limited by the amount
Mm.
of whiskey I can actually hold in my pretty small little space here. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, fun, and I'm sure there's a lot of people's. We talked about probably a lot of people's number ones.
yeah.
And again,
Wouldn't
we
not
don't know
surprising.
exactly what people rank these things. These are just tallies of who had them in their top 10, which is impressive
Yeah.
for some of these distilleries to begin with.
What's a really cool spin on it when it's not just the 25th best or whatever. It's they were
Yeah,
voted top 10.
yeah. There are people out there that think this is legitimately the best you can get. So I think
Yeah.
as a testament to all of these distilleries make good stuff. It's just dependent on your perspective, your experience, what you tend to prefer. But we're 2.5 or so hours in. Let's wrap this thing up and start preparing for
Good.
the maybe not the final version
Maybe
of
not.
it. We might do a wrap up episode because if that one's 2 hours, maybe we should
And
just
then
set
and then we're
a
gonna do
postmortem.
the top 10 worst distilleries.
Oh yeah, then we're just gonna talk. Yeah, we it's just be Jura 10 times, or like I don't know. But Jura can make good.
No, I don't know.
Jura can make good whiskey too. It's another distillery that
Everybody can make good whiskey.
everybody can. Yeah, yeah. That's everyone can make good whiskey.
Some of them choose not to, but
Some of them choose not to, or some of them make good whiskey and then choose to just either not release it, ruin it, or just dump it into a vat with a bunch of other garbage.
exactly.
But thank you, anyone that stuck around. We've been getting some good feedback. Someone actually mentioned, like, why aren't you on other podcast networks? It's because I never thought anyone would give a shit about any of this. So, um, the fact that you guys are enjoying it, we're getting good feedback, lot more views than I thought, lots of likes. I appreciate it. Even watch hours are good. People are actually watching some of this, which um, I will look into getting this uploaded to maybe a couple um, podcast platforms, some of the bigger ones. And it's at least to start with, see if people actually like it. I'll let you guys know maybe by this next episode.
Hey,
Because I
and
know,
maybe if you're listening on one of those podcast networks, we did it.
yeah, 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 we're here. Well, you might already, yeah, we're number one on Spotify. We're Joe Kiss My Ass Joe Rogan. All right, guys. Um, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Like, thumbs up, subscribe. Let us know. Are you demanding that we're on what podcast thing do you want us to be on? Because I pretty much only use Spotify, but I know a lot of people use other stuff. So let us know what you think about all of these distilleries. If one of these things should have been number one, or if you can't believe that anyone would ever spend any time drinking any of that swill, let us know down below. But until next week, thank you everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.